Am I the a-hole for kicking my sister out of my wedding because she didn't follow the color scheme? When I, 25F, was 9, my parents adopted my sister, Jen, who was 7 at the time. Jen was thin and fearful due to being neglected, and we did everything to make her feel loved. We bought her lots of toys. Everything Jen wanted, she got. When my parents asked me to move to the smaller bedroom so Jen could have my room, I was happy to. When they asked if I would let Jen pick the decorations and cake for my upcoming birthday, I agreed. I was so happy to have a sister, and I understood why my parents gave her special treatment. Only the treatment didn't stop. For years, every trip we went on, we had to do what Jen wanted to do. We had to eat where she wanted to eat, and she got to plan all of my birthday parties. If she didn't get to do what she wanted, then she threw a tantrum. I still felt loved and cared for by my parents. They drove me to practices, bought me things, cooked meals for me, spent quality time, and gave me advice, but I always came second to Jen. As I got older, I did anything I could to leave the house. I got my first job when I was 12. I vacationed with friends instead of family. I played 3 different sports and did band. I took my driver's test the day I turned 16 and bought a car the day after. I went to college on the other side of the country. Now that I make good money, I do things that I missed as a child. I take fancy vacations and throw elaborate parties as I please. My wedding was no exception. My fiance, Kip, and I wanted everything to be perfect. We thought it would be fun to have a color scheme, and my favorite color is yellow and his is blue, so my guests would wear yellow, his would wear blue, and mutual friends would wear green. I picked out a dress with green embroidered details, and he picked up a bouquet with green flowers. When Jen found out about this, she was mad. I didn't know this, but she hates yellow. It washes her out, and she told me under no circumstances that she would wear yellow. I shrugged and said that was fine. I would just kick her out if she didn't wear the color. There was no further discussion, but on my wedding day, Jen came in a purple dress, and I told her to leave immediately. The color scheme was perfect, and she ruined it. Jen refused to leave until I threatened to call security. The rest of the wedding went smoothly, but afterwards my parents were furious with me for kicking Jen out, and I told them that I warned her she would be kicked out if she didn't follow the color scheme. But they said they all thought it was a joke. They said it was cruel of me to kick my sister out over something so trivial. I told them this was my wedding, that I threw without their support, so I can kick out whoever I want to. Kip came rushing to defend me and even told my parents that they should be ashamed of how they treated me. But over the past few days, a lot of people I've spoken to, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, have been mixed. Some say they wouldn't have even invited Jen if they were me, while others think I should have let it slide. So, am I the a-hole? Edit. I want to make a few things clear. 1. I figured people would assume this, but I did not ask my guests to dress head to toe in their assigned color. I completely understand that people might not have yellow formal wear laying around. I said to dress in only neutral colors and/or your assigned color, so someone could wear a black dress and yellow jewelry, a black suit and a yellow tie, etc., but no colors outside neutral or your assigned color. Additionally, I invited Jen because she is family, and I honestly thought she was more mature than this. I did not know she hated the color yellow when I chose the color scheme. Edit number 2. 2 things for everyone to know. First, Jen was the only person not to follow the color scheme. 2, we didn't ask people to come in head to toe yellow, blue, or green. To get into specifics, we asked that if people did not choose those colors, they could wear neutral formal wear with a tie, necklace, accessory in their assigned color. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "Not the a-hole. The question here isn't whether or not a color scheme is stupid. It very well could be, but it's also becoming the norm. And frankly, if you don't like it, you don't have to attend the event. But what you don't get to do is say a color scheme is stupid, so I'll make up my own rules and force the couple being married to let me in." Jen was stupid here. OP, you did the right thing kicking her out. Her feelings that she can dictate the rules for your wedding aren't any worse than you having those rules in place. In short, F Jen. She got what she wanted in the end. And then user 2 commented and said, "Not the a-hole. I have been to weddings where the bride and groom wanted a color scheme. To date, I have not known of anyone who had such a problem that they showed up in a different color just for spite. Because, make no mistake about it, that is exactly why your sister showed up in purple. Pure spite. If the color yellow was really the problem, she could have asked to wear blue. Instead, she showed up in purple with the express intention of upstaging the bride and groom and causing a scene, knowing all the time that your parents would back her up. Your parents have been crappy to you ever since your sister showed up. Time to call them out and your sister for their obnoxious behavior and blatant favoritism." Update. First of all, thank you for all of your comments. I felt so guilty the past few days and was worried it would carry into my honeymoon, but you have helped me realize that I am not the bad guy here here, and it is okay that I responded the way I did. Last night, my parents reached out to me and asked if all the things Kip said about how they should be ashamed were true. At that point, I told them how my upbringing had impacted me, and how my wedding was supposed to make up for the parties I never had as a kid, the decisions I never got to make. For the first time, I was able to call all of the shots and make everything exactly the way I wanted it to be. I even showed them this post and how most of you responded to help reinforce what I said. My parents said they had absolutely no idea how deeply their treatment had affected me. This is somewhat fair because I never really spoke to them about it. But at the same time, I feel like they should have wondered why I left home as soon as I could, never came back, and hardly ever called or texted them. They said they feel so sorry about it and are now planning a vacation with them, myself, and Kip for next summer to make up for it. I'm trying not to get my hopes up, but at least now it looks like they're making an effort. As for Jen, according to my parents, she really struggled to make friends in middle school and high school. I didn't know this because I practically lived with my high school boyfriend my sophomore and junior year of high school, and then graduated early, and Jen repeated a year in elementary school due to trauma, so we were 5 grades apart despite only being 2.5 years apart. My parents tried putting her in therapy, but she wouldn't cooperate. College was a slap in the face for her when she realized that the world didn't revolve around her, that she had to live in the same 7x9 room with plaster walls and linoleum floors as everyone else. She dropped out after a year and tried getting a job, but got fired after a few months. At that point, my parents realized that they really effed up. They told Jen that she either had to go to intensive therapy or they would kick her out. And according to my parents, she's now taking classes at a community college and hoping to transfer to a 4-year institution. She's doing better for the most part, though she occasionally lashes out. I'm glad Jen is getting the help she needs and is working towards a career, and I'm excited about potentially going on a trip with my parents and husband, while also knowing they might bail, and I'm open to having more of a relationship with them, but I don't think we'll ever be a super tight-knit family. Some wounds are too deep. But instead of dwelling on the past, I'm looking towards my future, starting a family with Kip, and making sure I don't make the same mistakes that my parents did. So, first off, I have never met or heard of a person named Kip before, except for Kip Sabian. Is that a name people really have? Is that a common name? It can't be. Also, are color schemes for weddings a common thing? I'm not at the age where my friends are getting married in bulk, so I don't go to many weddings. So, is that a thing? I don't want to wear yellow. Me personally, magenta is my favorite color, teal coming in second place. But as for the story, this is just, a golden child story. We've gotten them before. Possibly not as intensely as or harshly as other ones that we've read, but still a golden child story nonetheless. But I don't think OP's the a-hole here. We had a story recently about a woman having a wedding and not wanting her sister to bring her help dog with her, and I was like, look, it's an a-hole move, but it's her wedding, right? Like, I don't agree with it, but like, at the end of the day, it's your wedding. You can do whatever you want. You can invite whoever you want. You cannot invite whoever you want. You can have a great relationship with your parents and say, don't come. It's your wedding, right? So you can make up whatever stupid rule you want. Not that I'm calling the color scheme stupid. Maybe a little. I don't know. I don't want to wear yellow. God, anyway, next story. Story number 2. I, 28M, messed up by asking my girlfriend, 26F, to stop talking about her late boyfriend. Her college boyfriend passed away in an accident 5 years ago. I, 28M, understand that he will always be a part of her, 26F's life, and she will always love him. Her grief and trauma and how she dealt with losing her boyfriend is a part of who she is as a person, and we have been dating for 2 years now. The problem is that she brings him into our relationship. Every time I make a mistake or get hurt, she always brings up how he used to treat her and how I should try to be more like him. She doesn't do it in an accusatory way, but it still kind of stings. It has been getting to me. Yesterday, I got the news that I received the promotion that I had been vying for. I was not very hopeful about getting it. It was a position which had many candidates from all different departments. We celebrated a little. We started talking about how we could do all the things that we had planned for. And in the middle of the conversation, I joked about being too anxious about these things. And she responded by saying that her boyfriend had always been so calm and collected, very chill about everything, and he could just shrug off anything. I am exactly the opposite. I'm anxious and a person who worries a lot. I don't know why, but it hurt me a lot. I asked her to stop talking about him, and she looked offended but didn't respond, and I just ruined the night. We sat there for a few minutes before she decided to clean up and go to bed early. I feel like I am being compared against someone that I will never match up to. I know that he is very important to her, but she can't cherish him without making me feel like crap. She's been distant today, and I know she is hurt, and she has barely spoken to me today. I feel like I should have just ignored her comments and rolled with it. My message and delivery were all wrong, and I feel guilty about hurting her. I should should have done a better job of being sensitive about this and brought it up when she were celebrating. I want to sort this out and have a productive conversation with her so that we can deal with the issue. How? I don't know, and I need some help going about that. Now, here are some relevant comments. User 1 said,
I don't think you're in the wrong here. Yeah, you could have been more sensitive about it, which you acknowledge and should apologize for, but I really don't think you're in the wrong. You're being held to an impossible standard, and that's 100% unfair to you. You can't even celebrate your own accomplishments without her trying to make it all about him. It sucks that it came to a head like this, but use this as a chance to finally address this issue.
And then user 2 commented and said,
You cannot move forward in your relationship with a dead guy hanging over the two of you. Yes, she can grieve and miss him. That isn't what she's doing, though. She is using him as a tool to aid in making you feel less than someone else. Seriously, she needs counseling.
Update. All the comments here helped me understand that we needed to talk about the issue, but she was still a bit mad at me. I thought I should just give her space for a few days. I think a day or two after it was announced that I was being promoted, though, some of my colleagues hosted a little after-work dinner for me, as I would be moving divisions and not working with them anymore. It was nice, and it really touched me, and it also made me understand how effed our relationship had become. I got what the comments meant, but I guess actually having a nice dinner celebrating my success felt great, and made me truly understand how unhappy I felt. We had the talk a few days later, and I told her that I felt unhappy and unappreciated, that I felt like I needed some time away from her. She almost seemed like she was waiting for this, and she didn't seem particularly upset over it. She said she understood, and she would move back to her parents as soon as possible. I know it is ugly of me, but some part of me wanted her to be upset. Some proof that she cared for me? I don't know. I feel like she didn't love me at all. I feel like I wasted years being in love with her. She moved out 2 weeks ago, and I miss her a lot. Home feels really lonely without her, but at the same time, I feel better. Not a lot, but I feel a bit better about myself. It is strange. She is not a bad person. She is a wonderful person, and that is why I fell in love with her. But the closer we got, the less happy our relationship made me. I know a lot of it was my fault, and I need to work on communication skills. And finally, in the comments section, one user said,
I know it's hard, but you absolutely did the right thing. I remember your original post and was so frustrated at your ex's behavior. It's going to be hard and sad now, but you will be so happy soon. Take the time to breathe freely and enjoy being on your own.
So, I feel like most people are probably going to be in OP's corner here. Like, yeah, he had his outburst and he probably should apologize for that and all that, but we understand why he's feeling that way. Because he's being compared to someone and, like, he can never catch up. Like, he's being compared to somebody who he's not. He's being compared to somebody who he's not like at all. He's the complete opposite of the other guy. And then he gets the promotion and then it gets stepped on anyway. Like, well, the other guy did this and this and that. It's like, oh my God, like, that hurts anybody. Understandably so. So, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't feel like she completely got over the guy, which, I mean, when you lose someone, you don't, but I mean, did she go to counseling afterwards? I don't feel like it. Because it is affecting her current relationship and it will probably affect her next relationship unless she deals with it to the point where it won't affect her relationships and she can healthily enter the next one. Anyway, next story. Story number 3. Am I the a-hole for prioritizing my nephew and niece over my own children after they hid their mom's affair from her for years? I, 57M, was married to my wife for almost 25 years, and we divorced 4 years ago after I found out about her infidelity. She had an affair partner for almost 5 years. She is now with her affair partner, and the whole process hurt me a lot because everything I did in life, I did it for my wife and kids, and then to find that out about my wife, it just hurt me. Well, my 2 children, 29F and 26M, had known about the affair for years, and they had hidden it from me. They both felt very guilty about it, and I don't blame them because they didn't want to break up their family. My daughter even cried a lot and apologized a lot of times, but I told her it was all right. They had their own lives now, and I didn't want this eating them up, so I told them to just let go of the guilt. However, ever since I found out that they had hidden the affair from me, I lost a lot of love for them. I wasn't going to cut them out of my inheritance or will or anything like that, but emotionally, I couldn't connect with them at all. I also have a niece, 30F, and my nephew, 28M, who I've been very close with, especially since their father passed away at a really young age. I played a father-like role during their younger years, because losing her husband at such a young age was very tough for my sister. Over the last 4 years, I have also been looking forward to spending more time with them. Both my niece and nephew have children, and they have invited me over for their children's birthdays. They have also invited me over for their own birthdays, on Father's Day, on holidays. Overall, we are a very tight-knit, multi-generational family, and I am very proud to be a grandpa to their children, and we are already developing a bond. However, in doing so, I have also lost a lot of interest in connecting with my own children, possibly all interest. My daughter has 2 children, while my son has his first child on the way. They have invited me over multiple times, but I have told them that I'm busy. I rarely go over, if at all, and I've missed almost all of their children's special occasions. I'm not really interested in being a grandpa to their children. Monetarily, sure, I have been sending them gifts, but I just don't feel like seeing them at all. My daughter especially seems very hurt by it at times, but I hope she understands the reason for this. So, am I the a-hole? Then in the comment section, OP elaborated on if he can forgive his children and move forward and said, I am not really looking for revenge against my own children. I just can't emotionally connect with them. This isn't about them. It's about me. When I go over to my nieces and nephews and spend time with them and their children, I am filled with joy. I cannot say the same for my own children. I feel nothing. Yes, my children are really hurt by this, especially my daughter. They know I spend time over at their cousins and with their children, but for the 20 to 30 years I have left, I want to prioritize myself and my mental health. And finally, OP elaborated on having his nephew and niece in his will and said, oh, both my niece and nephew were already in the will. I consider them as my children too, so it's divided equally between my son, daughter, niece, and nephew. Update. Thanks everyone for the advice. The one thing I got most from the comments was that my children deserved to know the truth and to not be left in a limbo like I was for years. And that's what I just did. I just got off a video call with my daughter and my son. The call was pretty rough and extremely emotional, but I got everything off my chest. I told them that while I had forgiven them, I could never forget it, and that for my mental health, it was better we limit our interactions. I told them to not feel guilty about anything, but that also after dedicating more than half my life to my wife and children, it was time I put myself first. I told them my heart wasn't in it to be a grandparent to their children. I was also honest with them and told them that my heart was only in it for my nephews and nieces' kids, and whenever I did go to their house, I felt joy, while with my own children, I felt nothing. My children probably already knew it, but I wanted them to hear it from me directly. It was really hard to get it off my chest and say it directly to my children's faces. I told them that they were still welcome to come to my house anytime and call me anytime they needed help. Both my children took the call really hard, but I think my daughter took it the worst. Those were really ugly tears, and I felt really bad about it. But I do feel a sense of relief, and I've pretty much told all of my feelings to my children and did not keep anything secret. I can now move forward with my life, and so can my children. Then in the comments section, one user said,
But wait, did they just accept it or begged for a chance? Also, did your kids' relationship with their mother suffer?
They didn't beg, but they did apologize a lot and also cried, and they asked me to reconsider. I told them I would, but for now, I would rather we limit the interactions. And yes, their relationship with their mother has also suffered a lot. And finally, user 2 commented and said,
Sad situation all around. OP definitely needs to speak to a professional therapist about all of this, if he hasn't already, and I wouldn't know what/how to feel. But instances like this deserve a professional therapist and not just Reddit comments. So I have to say about this story, it's given me a certain perspective, which is don't screw your parents over. Like, they had good intentions of not wanting to break up the family, I understand. But like, I mean, I already know not to be a jerk to my mom and dad, but like this really, I don't know, showed me something different. Like their parents have an obligation, but at the same time, you can break that bond with your parents if you do something bad enough. And unfortunately, this was one of those instances. They had good intentions, and he's like, hey, I forgive, but I can't forget. And right now, I just feel nothing towards you. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't blame OP for feeling the way he did. You know, like he said, everything he did was for the family. And, you know, 2 members lied, the other cheated, you know, they were all hiding something from him. Like, how do you not feel betrayed? Like, how do you not, like, walk away from that? How do you walk away from that unscathed? You don't. So anyway, I'm gonna go hug my mom or something. Next story.
Story number 4. Am I the a-hole for ditching the rest of the backpacking group that I was with when I was their only ride? So, hear me out. I, 22M, and my friend from college, 27M, were invited on a backpacking trip that was being organized by a friend of his who he had met while backpacking in Colorado the year before. The girl Kaylee, 25F, who organized the trip, had booked an Airbnb for all of us to stay at the night after we got off the trail from a 3-day trek. There was enough room for 2 people each to the 2 beds, and then enough room for 2 on the pull-out couch. We all paid evenly for the Airbnb. Of course, we thought Kaylee should have priority to have a bed since she had done all of the planning. And there was a boyfriend-girlfriend couple as a part of the 6 of us planning to stay in the Airbnb. So naturally, my friend and I felt like we should take the pull-out couch. And this is how it was settled before ever commencing the trip. However, midway through the trek, the couple had to turn around and head home. So now there would be only 4 people to the Airbnb. And naturally, so we thought, my friend and I assumed we would now sleep on the real bed. Along with the couple backing out, my friend and I became the only ride for Kaylee and the other guy, Tyler, to get back to the airport in Denver. And my friend and I would have a 14-hour drive back after dropping them off. Also, side note, Tyler is a relatively passive character in this saga as he didn't speak up much for either side, and was designated to be sharing the bed platonically with Kaylee anyway, so you won't hear much mention of him. So anyway, such was the case when we landed at the Airbnb that my friend and I set our things next to the real bed that Kaylee had not taken, and took a cat nap on the bed. Then, enter Chris Fisher. Kaylee had invited her friend Chris Fisher to come hang out for the night. Chris lived in Colorado only a couple hours away from where we were, and apparently was a celebrity of sorts in her circle. So Chris had come in and said hi to Kaylee and Tyler, and was briefly introduced to me and my friend, saying a simple, "What's up?" in response to the introduction. Chris then was shooting the breeze with Kylie and Tyler, and my friend and I went into the room to organize our luggage. Then we hear Chris say, "I need a shower," and he comes into the room without a word to us, and plops his stuff onto the foot of our bed and rummages for his toiletries and hops into the shower. After Chris is out of the shower, the group is talking like they're gonna go out for the evening for beers. But I know that we have a 14-hour drive ahead of us the next day after dropping Kaylee and Tyler off at the airport. So I tell them all I'm going to hang back and go to sleep for the night. Chris left his bag on the bed, so I moved it to the counter in the living room so he wouldn't forget it. And from here, according to my friend, he spent an entire evening out in Grand Lake with the hugest douche he had ever encountered in his life. Fisher couldn't stop talking about these obscure world records that he had broken and or set in the world-renowned sport of ridge running, and his records for most elevation gain in a day by repeatedly going up and down some particular mountain. Kaylee was apparently eating it up as if she was utterly starstruck. If you've seen the movie The Other Guys and recall the attitude that everyone had when encountering The Rock and Sam Jackson's characters, this was, according to my friend, exactly Kaylee's demeanor. After returning from a soul-sucking outing, my friend was more than ready to bid Mr. Fisher adieu and proceed to never see his face again. That, unfortunately, was not what happened. Kaylee was beyond upset that I was still in the bed, apparently, and she wanted Chris to have the bed. She invoked the fact that my friend and I were designated for the pull-out couch from the start. My friend was sticking up for us, though, saying that not only did it only make sense that we take the real bed after it had opened up, but that Fisher had pitched in nothing for this trip, that we weren't even made aware until last minute that he was coming by, and most importantly, that I was already asleep in the bed. Kaylee apparently was absolutely refusing to have it any other way, and would not stop hammering the issue. Finally, Tyler came and woke me up for me to come sleep on the pullout. It was around midnight now, and we needed to be out by 6 a.m. I came into the kitchenette in a sleepy stupor. Here is where I got a real taste of the douche that is Chris Fisher. For 2 hours in the kitchenette, 8 feet away from the couch Kaylee had insisted we sleep on, my friend and I sat there and listened to Kaylee and Fisher drag on and on about all their outdoor adventure prowesses, talking about how great they were at skiing, at snowboarding, at setting FKTs on trails. I did not know until this point that vacation activities could be such a flex. But here they proved to me that one can make them an entire personality and the culmination of an entire life of accomplishment. Looking back now, I should have piped up about how I went to Europe and hiked on the Matterhorn, but surely they would have retorted with how they had gone to Europe too, but even harder. Here is where my friend and I may be the a-holes, though. My friend was staring at me and seething. He hated the fact that they had woken me up, hated the fact that they kicked us out of our bed, and hated the insult to injury of them having the audacity to talk about stuff for another 2 hours right by where my friend and I needed to be sleeping. About 1.5 hours in, as he seethes, he subtly gestures at me to look at my phone. I open my phone, and I read, "Let's ditch these a-holes." And as soon as they finally head to bed, we promptly agree that Chris Fisher, in taking our place in our bed, unwittingly took his place as their ride to Denver. We grabbed our packs by the door and set out back to Oklahoma at 3 a.m. on the dot. So, are we the a-holes? Update. Honestly, I had never heard of these people, besides of course my friend, until a week before that trip and had never heard of or from them since we rode off into the proverbial sunset. So really, my update is that this is a chapter closed for good. Then OP provided more information in the comments section and said, just in case anyone suspects that I'm exaggerating his ego, here is the famous Chris Fisher in an hour-long interview about his most recent ridge running record that he had accomplished just days before our encounter with him. The video is called Whirl Out Back FKT with Chris Fisher. Ugh. Then Chris Fisher shows up in the comments section and said, this is pretty funny, especially for the part where you actually still drove them to the airport. You did an excellent job manipulating the story, Tanner. Then one user replied to Chris and said,
Bro, with how much you love yourself, why haven't you put a ring on it? You seem like you could be pretty chill, but damn, you seem to let your personal achievements rule your personality. Do you have other hobbies like fishing or kayaking? Are you a snowmobiler or do you volunteer for anything? Does hiking just envelope your life? I have a close friend who sounds a lot like you, where literally every day I speak to him, he has to update me on his PB bicycling time and distance. It's cool you love what you do, but why do you have a personal website listing off all these weird achievements? Are you going to do something in the Olympics someday? Sorry for the verbal diarrhea, but I'm just genuinely curious.
Then Chris replied and said, since you're curious, I do love myself like you should yourself, but I'm a paid professional mountain athlete, so it's literally my job to post about the things that I do in the mountains. Personally, I hate social media, and I wish I wasn't on it, but again, it's literally my job, and I love climbing, skiing, and running around the mountains, so I'll continue to do my thing. People that actually know me would speak much differently than this OP, and it's honestly pretty hilarious that he came up with this whole story. Anyways, hope I answered your question. Have a great evening. Then user 2 commented and said,
Chris, did you ever pay anything for the room, or did you just mooch like an a-hole?
And then finally, Chris replied and said, being invited in to stay the night by the person who paid for the Airbnb isn't mooching, but I offered to sleep in my truck many times as I had a sleeping setup in my truck. Update number 2. So, there was indeed some embellishment. Everything in this story is true, except for the part about us actually leaving. My friend tried to talk me into it, but I said it was too mean to do, even in response to what they had done to us. I couldn't bear leaving someone hours away from where they needed to be, though my friend did insist that Fisher would surely be a reliable ride to the airport. In reality, we had told them upon agreeing to be their ride to the airport that this would necessitate us leaving very early that morning, because my friend and I were going to be cutting it close to try and make it back to Oklahoma all in one stretch, so he could make it to his 6 p.m. Central Time class that evening. So, even after being treated like dirt, even after them sleeping in and then lollygagging all morning and causing us not to hit the road until about 2 hours after we needed to be on the road, we still drove an hour out of our way that morning to take K and T to the airport, which overall ended up making us late for his class. We called friends and family all that day to pick their brains about if we would have been, as I maintained, wrong to leave them, or if we should have, as my friend insisted, left them K and T high and dry. We got mixed reviews from that. We had completely forgotten about the scenario until today when we were driving on our way to another new adventure and reading Am I the A-hole posts, as we do love to do on our car rides, and realized that this story would be perfect for this forum. Of course, we were not posting into a forum called Would I Hypothetically Have Been the A-hole If I Had Done the Thing I Thought to Do But Was Too Nice to Have Done, so we have to add to the story the alternate ending that we've always wondered about. So, sorry for embellishing, Chris, but I'm not sure how the reality here paints you in any better of a light. The truth sets us free, I suppose. Now, here are some more relevant comments. User 1 said,
still not the a-hole, and you were still kind enough to take them to the airport, and they delayed your trip by 2 hours. You are better than me. I would have left them after 30 minutes.
Then user 2 commented and said,
so, after all of that and them oversleeping, Chris didn't even offer to take them to the airport? He should have kept his mouth shut, not the a-hole.
Then Chris replied and said, my mouth shut about what? I didn't say a word to anybody. I didn't kick anybody out, and I didn't stay up until 3 a.m. talking. Nobody overslept, nobody was late for anything, and we all had a wonderful breakfast the next morning. And finally, user 3 commented and said,
I think Chris may have gained some respect here by piping up like a gentleman, or just a decent human being, actually. It seems like he stood idly by like a snake watching Kaylee be the one to make the fuss. when all he had to do was say he'd take the pullout. This whole "I'll just sleep in my truck" BS was obviously just false pity intended to make Kaylee feel bad for him. So kids, is Chris a douche or not? You decide. Epic rap battles of history. That's not how it goes. I really don't know. Yeah. I will say this though, every now and then we read a story and the way the person writes is just like verbal kryptonite for me. Like I cannot audibly translate what they're writing out of my mouth. And this OP was one of those people. Like I just the way he writes. Some people, they just write in a particular way and I struggle. Okay, I struggled with this story. And Chris is probably a douche. I don't know. Maybe, possibly. Who knows? It's ambiguous. You know, I kind of like that. We need a bit more artistic stories with open endings. And then you can decide, all right, I'm team Chris is a douche. Maybe you think he isn't, and that's the beauty of art. It can be whatever you want. Maybe Chris and Kaylee are having an affair. Maybe Tyler's a secret jealous boyfriend or something, or has had a lifelong crush on Kaylee. Who knows? Maybe OP and his friend are gay lovers. Next story.
Story number 5. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my fiance's ex to our wedding? Throwaway account. I, F26, have been with Henry, M36, almost 37, for 5 years now. We're engaged and are currently planning our wedding. A little background. Henry is the youngest child, and his mother really wanted a girl. Because of this, Henry grew up feeling despised by his mom, who openly says hurtful things like how he was a disappointment from the start, or how she never got the daughter she wanted. Despite this, instead of going no contact with her, Henry has been trying very hard to win her love. Continuing, Henry had a long-term ex, F32, who is very close with his mother. She became the daughter his mother always wanted. However, this ex cheated on him with a coworker and left him. After 2 years, Henry and I met. Eventually, the ex wanted to get back together with him, but he said no and blocked her. Despite this, she and his mother remain best friends, and his mother still invites her to family functions, and my fiance and I just ignore her. His mother doesn't like me and believes I'm the reason she can't have her preferred daughter-in-law, and my fiance had explained many times that he would rather stay single forever than go back to his ex. So even if I didn't exist, he wouldn't be with her. Yesterday, my mother-in-law asked me how many guests she could invite to our wedding. I told her that since my parents could invite 8 to 10 people, she could do the same. She thanked me, but an hour later, she smiled and said, "Well, we have one yes already," referring to my fiance's ex, and I told her that was very inappropriate since we aren't even friends with her. She responded by saying that it's her guest list and it's none of my business. That she said I'm insecure because the ex is the whole package and that I'm just a rebound girl. Henry then told his mom to stop and he asked her to leave. Once she left, he asked me if I could be the bigger person and let her have this, as he really wants his mom to be at the wedding. He suggested that if inviting his ex would keep his mom quiet, we should just ignore her. So, am I the a-hole for not wanting her there? P.S. We are mostly paying for the wedding ourselves, with some help from my dad. Mother-in-law has not contributed. Then in the comments section, OP elaborated on the future mother-in-law and the ex-girlfriend's relationship and said, "She calls her the daughter I always wanted. They do spa days together, hang out all the time. She worships the ground that she walks on. On the other hand, my fiance and I are either criticized constantly or just ignored. His brother's wife usually talks to me during the family gatherings, and last time his brother's wife complimented my baking and asked me for the recipe for the dessert that I made. I told her that it's my mom's recipe and I'll take a picture and send it to her next time I'm at her place. Then my mother-in-law laughed and yelled at me and said, "So, your mommy made it and you took credit? Surprise, surprise, little girl." And I told her no, my mom has the original recipe, I just don't want to say it by heart and forget something. My mom was on a trip, how could she make this? Also, my mother-in-law is on a trip, how could she have made this? Well, my mother-in-law and ex laughed and made jokes about it all night. Henry told me to let it go, but that's just who she is even when she drinks. Also, she does have on and off boyfriends. Every time she breaks up with a guy, mother-in-law comments about how she is too good for that guy. She can do better, yes. And also, mother-in-law and her call me little girl, which really bothers me. She is tall and athletic. I'm short and petite, 5'3", 115 pounds, and my whole life people have made fun of me for being little. Henry thinks it's a joke because I'm younger and his ex is insecure. I told him I don't care what the reason is, I hate being called little girl. She has blonde hair and blue eyes just like mother-in-law. I have dark hair and eyes, by the way, and she constantly also compliments how gorgeous she is, or how if Henry and her got married, their kids would be gorgeous, as both parents would have blue eyes. Update. Thank you all so much for the comments and DMs. I had a calm talk with Henry and explained how I feel disrespected by his mom's words and actions. While I can't control who she associates with, it is very disrespectful that she invites your ex to all of the gatherings, and that the two of them are constantly picking on me. Henry acknowledged this, but said that's just how his mom is. I told him that it's best we cancel the wedding then, at this point, because I want our wedding day to be a happy, memorable occasion, not one filled with drama and stress. I added that his mom is going to ruin this day, and that he's just going to accept it as usual, which I can't tolerate. I told him I won't marry him until he sets some boundaries with his mother. This situation is ridiculous. Henry went on about how he can't cut his mom out of his life because she sacrificed so much raising him and his brother as a single mom, but he admitted he doesn't know how to handle her either. I told him I can't make that decision for him, but I'm going no contact with his mom, and I suggested that maybe therapy could help him realize how abusive and toxic his relationship with his family is, and help him decide what to do with his life. I also said I won't attend any more gatherings. He went quiet for a while, then he called his mom on speakerphone to tell her that the wedding was canceled. She went on and on, saying that he finally did the right thing by dumping that whiny female dog, and she called me insecure and controlling and saying it was a miserable relationship. Henry kept interrupting her, saying, "Mom, stop," but she didn't care. In the end, he told her, "Mom, we are not breaking up. She's here and she heard everything. She canceled it, not me, because you kept disrespecting her." Then his mom screamed and said, "That manipulative female dog set me up," and started ranting again. Henry then told her that he needs some time to think and it's best if she gives him some space, then hung up. We've barely spoken since, and he's spending today helping his brother with some renovations, and I'm home alone. Hopefully, my next update will be less depressing. Now, here are some relevant comments. User 1 said,
I'm glad that you stood your ground, OP. This is no way to begin a marriage. You're already miserable, so just imagine how much worse things would have gotten if you proceeded with the wedding. Anyway, I truly do hope that Henry seeks therapy. It's clear that he has a lot to unpack, and you are not the person to do that for him. I commend you for recognizing that and expressing it to him, and I wish you both the best.
I don't want to make him go no contact with her. If I make the decision for him, he will resent me. Hopefully, he comes up with a solution, or we have to go our separate ways. Then user 2 commented and said,
Why does everybody jump to no contact? He could just grow a spine and try to train his mom to have some boundaries. Might be a bit painful for him, but does not have to be no contact. Just less contact on his and your terms.
And then finally, user 3 replied and said,
Not after she called the future mother-in-law of his children a manipulative female dog.
Oh, she has called me worse when she was drunk. She calls me little girl, midget rebound girl. She says I have the body of a 12-year-old boy and then calls his ex the whole package. Gorgeous, the one that got away from Henry. He always tells me to let it go and that she's like this when she gets drunk and to please just ignore her. Update number 2. It's 6 a.m. and I've been crying all night. Sorry for any typos. He broke up with me. He ignored all of my messages yesterday, and it was late when I finally texted his brother to ask him if he was okay. His brother said, yeah, he left 2 hours ago, and then he gave his ex a ride and then came home. I asked him his ex was there, but he didn't reply. When he finally came home, he told me to sit down because we needed to talk. He said, I've thought about our situation, and I think we should end it. He said today that he hung out with his family, and even his mom and ex came over. They all told him that by me going no contact with his mom, it was going to be so awkward, and that they'd be stuck in the middle. He said to me, when you weren't here today, I enjoyed my time with my family. There was no tension, and I didn't have to worry about you being upset. And then I asked him, why did it take you 2 hours to drop off your ex? Did you sleep with her? And he told me I was being ridiculous, and that he was just talking to her. He accused me of being controlling and insecure and said I'm isolating him from his friends and family. And I asked him again, so, nothing happened? And he danced around it, but eventually he admitted, we fooled around, but that's it. And I told him I couldn't believe what a pathetic, weak man he is, letting his mom convince him to ruin everything. And next he's getting a BJ from his cheating ex-girlfriend. We ended up arguing, and he went to sleep. I cried all night. And today I'm going to call my dad and ask if I can stay with him. Then in the comments section, one user said,
I hope you are packed and gone before he wakes up. Then block him.
He has left again without saying a word. My dad and stepmom are coming over soon to help me out. And finally, user 2 commented and said,
Good. I hope he stays gone so you can pack up in peace. I pray you go no contact with him and his entire toxic family. And I'm hoping for an update where you are living your best life in your new city with your super supportive friends and a hot as hell new man.
Yes, his last words last night were, I want you out of my house soon. And I'm glad he left, so it will be easier for him and my dad to avoid each other. And I don't even care where he went to. I'll send him an e-transfer for rent for August, and the expenses too, which were due yesterday, and then I will block him forever.
Oh, Henry, you gorgeous fool, you stupid man. You went back to the toxic, cheating ex. You listened to the abusive mother. I think the trauma, like, she just hammered him down, right? Like, he is underneath the mother's boot. And I don't see him getting out from under there. I mean, he just left his fiance because his mom was probably, her long-term plan worked. She's like the Bene Gesserit from Dune. You know, she planted the seeds and now it's paid off and everyone listens to her.
She's got too much power over the guy, and naturally, I understand why. Like, from the start,
You're not good enough for my love. You're not good enough. So he just wants to do anything to appease mommy, but mommy doesn't love him because he doesn't have a vagina.
So Henry's screwed from the get-go, and now he went back to his cheating ex. Oh boy, what story, do we read on here where somebody goes back to their cheating ex and it's good?
It rarely happens, and when it does, it never ends good. Let's be honest. All right, if there's an update 3 months from now, Henry's dead. Okay, he died. Next story.
Story number 6. Am I the a-hole for buying my girlfriend a necklace instead of a ring? Throwaway account, because my girlfriend follows my Reddit. I, 29M, have been with my girlfriend, 28F, for 7 years, and I've recently decided that I want to propose to her. When it came time to buy an engagement ring, I had a very difficult time deciding what to get her, mostly because she absolutely hates wearing rings. She has a medical condition that causes her hands to swell, and another one that makes her fingers dry and flaky. She downright refuses to wear rings, and I don't want to get her something that will ultimately be useless. I went to a jeweler and explained the situation, and he suggested I buy her a different piece of jewelry instead. I ended up finding the most perfect necklace I could imagine. It's gold, her favorite, and it has both of our birthstones on it, entwined. It's absolutely stunning, and it was about the same as my budget for a ring. I thought this was a perfect solution, and I was excited to propose to my girlfriend with this non-traditional gesture. But when I told her sister my plans, she told me it was tacky, and no woman would ever want to be proposed to with a necklace. She told me I should just buy a ring that she can put on a chain and wear as a necklace, but I don't see the point as I have already bought her a necklace. I was planning on proposing to my girlfriend on vacation next month, but now I'm not so sure. Her sister told me I will be an a-hole if I propose with a necklace, but I need outside perspectives. Am I the a-hole for buying my girlfriend a necklace instead of a ring?
Now, here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "You know your girlfriend, OP. How will she feel? Personally, I think this is a great idea, but her opinion is the one that matters."
I thought she would love it, but now I'm worried. I want to subtly bring it up, but I'm not sure how without tipping her off this close to vacation. In the past, she's joked that I should propose with a puppy, but I can't do that right now.
Then User 2 commented and said, "OP, have you asked your girlfriend what she wants?"
We have talked about being engaged, and it's something we both really want. When it comes to her hands, she's a bit sensitive. A few years ago, her mom gave her a ring for a graduation gift, and she was visibly disappointed. So I just know she hates them.
And finally, User 3 commented and said, "Have you two even discussed getting engaged? Usually a woman will tell her SO what her preferences are."
We have. I've mentioned alternative jewelry, and she said the idea was cute, but that conversation was 2 years ago now, and the confidence I had went away with her sister's criticism. Update number 1. I never could have anticipated this post getting so much attention. I really just wanted to know if other women would find the necklace to be acceptable, but all of your advice and encouragement has given me the confidence to propose to my girlfriend. Today, I was gonna wait 2 weeks until we were on vacation, but I don't want to be anxious until then, and I would rather us use that vacation as an engagement celebration than me panicking the entire time over how I'm going to ask her. Her mother thinks the necklace is perfect, as do her best friends. I'm also not really sure why her sister is so upset, and I should have mentioned that her sister is only 19, so she may just have a narrow view of engagements. But today, my girlfriend and I are in her grandparents' cabin for a long weekend, and I'm going to ask her to marry me with the necklace next to her favorite lake with our dogs. I'm absolutely freaking out, and my hands are shaking uncontrollably, and I'm pretending to shower as I write this. I just truly cannot wait any longer, especially after this post. You all have gotten me way too excited. I will update again with her answer. Thank you all so much, and I'm sorry I will not be responding to any comments while I figure this out. Wish me luck. Update number 2. Well, she said yes. Here's how it went. We woke up early in the morning with our 2 dogs, went out for a nice early morning walk with the mist and the cold morning air, got back to the cabin where I made us both breakfast, French toast and bacon, her favorite, and afterwards, we went out in a canoe ride to the center of the lake. She could absolutely tell that I was freaking out because she asked me about 15 times if I was okay. Then, we got to the center of the lake and I was basically silent from total fear when she finally said,
"Jake, is something going on?"
So, I grabbed her hands and told her that I think she's the most incredible person on the planet, and I can't imagine living this life with anyone else. I pulled out the box with the necklace in it and asked her if she would make me the happiest person alive and marry me. She instantly burst into tears and said she absolutely would. She didn't even question the necklace and completely understood my choice and told me it was the best thing I could have ever done to ask her. She told me she doesn't want me to spend my money on another ring, nor does she want a silicone one. She says the necklace is perfect. We spent about 10 minutes sobbing and hugging and kissing until I finally brought us back to shore, where she immediately started calling all of her friends and family. Her sister even texted me and told me that she thinks I made the right decision, which feels really great to be honest. I'm so happy I didn't wait. Part of me wanted to do it this weekend, but I wouldn't have unless I had this push from all of you. Thank you so much for your kind words and encouragement. We're reading through all of your comments together, now while we laugh and talk about the future. My fiance, Grace, also wants me to let you know that she appreciated your kind words towards me and the push to propose today. Maybe I'll update in the future, but we'll see. I now have a lot of planning for the future. So, I'm reading my notes here, and some people were like, yo, OP, did you propose in a canoe? Considering the possible danger of losing or dropping the necklace. And he didn't even realize it till his mom pointed out, but he said, luckily his fiance is a calm person, so there was no flailing or risk of losing the necklace, thankfully.
Well, isn't that good? And the sister, well, she was no help.
I mean, maybe a little, like, that is her sister, but I mean, all her friends and family were like, yeah, go for it. Seems like a good alternative since she can't wear rings.
I just hope it's a nice, pretty necklace that she wears all the time, even in the swimming pool. Don't do that. Anyway, good for OP.
Next story. Story number 7. Will I be the a-hole for calling off my engagement after my fiance basically said I'm not exciting? I, 29M, know this may sound like a huge overreaction on my part, but my head has been ringing ever since this has happened. I've been engaged to my fiance, 28F, for a few months now. We had dated for just shy of 2 years prior to that. It would be cliche to say everything was going great, but for the most part, it was good. My family really took a liking to her, which was also really great. Now, I've never really been the one to think about too much about how I'm viewed as a partner, but all of that changed recently. I basically overheard her on the phone telling her friend that if she wants to find the one, excitement isn't important. She basically said that me, OP, isn't exciting, but he makes me feel safe, and that's when I realized I wanted to settle down with him. And this kinda hit me hard. Reddit, I've read these type of posts before. The whole she goes for bad boys, then settles with a safe schmuck type of thing, but I don't think that's what she meant. So the day after, I just straight up told her that I overheard her talking about me and that I don't understand what she meant by not finding me exciting. She then told me that it's true that she doesn't find me exciting, but that doesn't matter. I honestly felt very hurt. Maybe my ego is fragile, I don't know, but it was a surprise to me because I felt like the way I see myself in my head was colliding with how she sees me, and it made me feel spaced out. I asked her what she means by not finding me exciting, and she didn't seem to know how to even answer. She could see I was upset, and as pathetic as this sounds, I made an excuse to leave and said we'll talk about it later. Ever since then, my head has been spinning. I ride motorcycles, I have tattoos, I go to the gym, I do MMA as a hobby. So how is it that I'm not the exciting guy? I've always seen myself as being that exciting guy. My ex was basically obsessed with me and constantly made it clear that she found me exciting. But now my fiance doesn't see me as exciting for whatever reason. I was honestly shocked because I felt my sense of self kind of crumble. And what made it worse is I am excited by her. When I see her, I want to rip her clothes off. I want to do things. I think about her. But she seemingly doesn't see me the same way at all. As crazy as this sounds, I have considered calling off the engagement entirely. Am I being crazy here? Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said,
I think I get her, and I get your take too, and it can just be some definitions here. Real talk. Your sense of being an exciting man is having a motorcycle, some ink, and going to the gym to wrestle? Your idea of being excited is ripping her clothes off? Dude, gonna buy that convertible when you hit 50, or the newest trend, an all-black Jeep with no hardtop? Everything you've posted is honestly rather routine and safe. You wear your insecurities like a light-up name badge in how you describe yourself. By the way, and don't see it about yourself. I do manly thing and I am manly and exciting. It is kind of funny to see from an outside perspective, but probably not funny for you to hear that though. Exciting guys are the idiots who are unpredictable, truly off the wall, and while fun to be around, aren't anyone to aspire to be or with. The guys who keep flipping jobs because they go on adventures, who tiptoe the line of illegal for funsies, who can turn the happy hour into a rave, exciting for sure, and it doesn't sound like you. And that is not a bad thing. Being predictable and safe is a good thing, and I'd encourage you to stop overthinking here.
But the thing is, I never saw myself as that safe, stable guy. All my exes described me as exciting and clearly saw me that way. It's the self-image I always had of myself. Now I'm suddenly not that guy? I'm gonna have to talk to her more about this, but it really feels like the way I view myself has been shattered. Very hard to describe the feeling. And then user 2 commented and said,
Not the a-hole for feeling hurt, and your partner did you no favors by not answering the question. Spiraling is going to lead to the end of the relationship for certain. I wouldn't call it off just yet, though. She really needs to explain the whole exciting thing. Some women with crappy relationship pasts think exciting is toxic behavior, cheating, disrespect, etc. Maybe she has kinks. Who knows? Your view of excitement is probably different. Definitely talk before pulling the plug. She could have said this all wrong. Or if it's the worst, you at least know before you got married, and it's easier to break up than divorce.
Update. The last few days have been a roller coaster of emotions. There were a lot of interesting perspectives from both male and female posters. It seems that the female poster said that being seen as a safe guy is a really great compliment, whereas the male poster said I should run for the hills. Certainly an intriguing insight into how men and women see things differently. So I ended up talking to my fiance about what she meant. She seemed really nervous and knew that she had upset me. I have to admit, I was quite nervous too. It's not easy when your sense of self has crumbled. Learning that you aren't seen in the way that you think you are is a very tough feeling. I can't describe it, but it made me feel really fragile in the truest sense of the word. I started by telling her that I was really upset about her comment because frankly, I had always thought I was that exciting guy to her. I had told her that in my mind, I was the guy who makes her heart skip a beat. So I had to brace myself and ask again what she meant when she said I wasn't exciting. She looked like she wanted to cry because I guess she could sense I was also upset. She said that she didn't want to hurt my feelings, but that I make her feel very safe and secure, and that with me, I'm not exciting in the sense that I don't give her thrills like her exes used to. And man, that hurt, but I was still confused. She was being really vague and not really clear in what she meant. I had to ask again what she meant by thrills, and she just began crying and apologizing. She tried to hug me, but I again walked out. I seem to do this when things get emotional. So I decided to take some shrooms and spend the rest of the day outside at a nearby lake. This helped me clear my mind and come to some devastating realizations about myself. I think what I realized was that I was lying to myself. Another commenter said it, which I didn't want to admit, which is I'm more into her than she is into me. I didn't disclose this on my first thread, but she never initiates sex. I don't think she's done that once. With my exes, they always initiated with me. You see, my fiancé is beautiful, to the point where I wonder how I landed her. But you see, that was the issue. Because I was so attracted to her, I wanted her approval. I know that sounds pathetic, but I was able to overlook red flags such as her lack of initiating sex. I thought if I stayed with her, she'd like me the way I like her. Now here's the kicker. I thought that if I proposed to her, then over time I could win her over. I've been with women who were madly into me, and my fiancé just didn't behave like them at all. In addition to never initiating, she never complimented me much. It was always one-sided. A lot of this begs to question, though. Why would she even be with me? I think that she saw me as someone who could provide stability, and I guess maybe she thought my exterior, tattoos, motorcycles, MMA, craft beer, was a facade. I mean, maybe she was kinda right. Not that I don't enjoy those things, I do, but I am able to have that lifestyle because my parents are wealthy doctors. Maybe she thought I was cosplaying as a bad boy, and that in actuality I'm a loaded rich kid who provides stability. The other insight I had was that, truth be told, I didn't want to actually get married. I definitely do one day, but I didn't really think it through. I thought to myself that if I propose, I will grow accustomed to the idea of getting married. But the truth is, I kind of want to continue my lifestyle as it is, which involves riding my motorcycles, fixing muscle cars, traveling across the country, going to festivals, etc. Do I want to get married one day? Of course, but I want to be with a woman who is really crazy about me, someone who compliments me a lot, initiates sex, etc. So I ended up talking with her later on and telling her I want to call things off and end things. I won't bore with the details, but yes, she cried a lot. Even got angry, said I wasted her time. I told her that it wasn't anything she did, but she didn't buy that and kept pressing. She told me that I misunderstood her comment, but I told her she couldn't even clarify what she thought. It ended with me telling her that I have nothing against her, but that I am just not ready for marriage. I told her that the lifestyle I want to continue in addition to me not feeling the connection I thought I had with her was why, and it ended quite predictably. But I think going forward, I'm going to see a therapist to sort my insecurities out, as well as find someone more compatible with myself. And finally, in the comments section, one user said,
She didn't answer still what the exes did that was so thrilling? I said it in your first post, and I'll say it again. Some people think of toxicity as a thrill, and I have a feeling that's what it is. At least you attempted to get an answer, and sorry it wasn't the one you deserved to hear. Feeling loved and safe is an important feeling, and it's what set my partner apart for me. Definitely didn't make him boring, and please don't change yourself on account of her crappy mindset. I laughed when she said you wasted her time. The lady doth project too much.
So, I have a friend who I feel like is 80% of this guy in the story, so I just thought it very amusing and entertaining. Also, maybe he is an exciting guy in his own eyes. Maybe he lives a personally exciting life, but do you excite your partner? And it seems like he didn't really do so too much. It seems like she just wasn't excited by him in general. And like that last comment said, maybe she one of those toxic guys or something like that. Some people just need that drama. Some people don't know how to operate unless things are chaotic. And, they grew up in that hurricane and they don't feel safe unless they're in the eye of one. And also, just like OP, if my partner doesn't initiate bye, okay, not even 2 buys, you get 1 buy, all right? If my partner doesn't compliment me, that's the second buy, okay? You can compliment my jokes. You can compliment my outfit. If I do squats that day, you can compliment my ass, all right? You got a lot of options. But if you don't do any, then, you're not for me. Get to the side of the road. Next story. Story number 8. My fiance M30 keeps pressuring me, F29, to perform party tricks with friends. He also wants me to perform at our wedding. I've lurked on here long enough to know that one of the main questions is how long we've been together. I met him in college and we started dating after graduation. I was also recently promoted to a position with different hours that allowed me to pursue a hobby that I did through high school. I practice aerial skills, and my new position allows me to clock out before the studio closes. I kept up some conditioning that I used to do in the gym, so it helped me somewhat stay in shape over the years. However, I've noticed a change in my fiancé James since inviting him to a practice. We were invited to a graduation party over the summer, and one of the games that they played involved a volunteer party trick for a prize. James raised his hand on my behalf without warning me and asked me to do a split, and everyone was looking at me. Before I continue, my studio had a recital that I didn't feel ready to perform in. I was just getting back after years off, and I vented to him about how I was shy for other reasons. The first was that I was really rusty, and the second was because of some weight I was trying to lose. Those were my reasons for skipping the recital that he knew weeks before the graduation party. So when he asked me to do a split/handstand on the spot, I was really anxious and whispered I didn't want to, but he tried to get others to cheer me on to do it, and that's when I started to cry. I got up to go to the bathroom after they moved on to someone else, and he followed me and apologized too. For context, he wasn't like this until he came to my practice, and he did something else a few weeks before the graduation party too. He began asking me to do flexible positions in bed, and I didn't mind the first time he asked. But he has wanted to have more sex since my practice, and he'd ask me about different poses each time. I don't mind sometimes, but he's been unusually pushy since the practice, even when I said I didn't want to sometimes. I told him I was fine with it sometimes, but he keeps bringing me new poses he looked up that turns him on. But those aren't ideal for me, and I felt like an object with his splits request at the graduation. I accepted his graduation apology when we talked at home, and I told him I didn't mind trying poses from time to time. But I also told him that sometimes didn't mean every time, and I also told him how the graduation hurt my feelings. He's since apologized and has stopped requesting poses for a few weeks, but something else he said made me wonder if he got it at all. He said he wanted to respect my request, but he also asked if I could perform skills at our wedding after looking up some YouTube weddings that featured them. I told him that I didn't want to, and that it didn't seem like the time or place, not to mention becoming sweaty and having to change clothes. I also pointed out how those videos featured contracted performers and not the bride performing. I haven't even told my family or friends that I got back into silks because I want to refine my skills and confidence a bit, but he's been pushing me because it would help me overcome my fears. But when I told him no, he told me to think about it and that he would check back with me occasionally, and that really bothered me. I'm not ready, but he doesn't understand that. He's also not the one performing, but he's been really pushy since attending my practice, and it's honestly turning me off a lot. I just wanted to ask, how do I go forward from here after he said he laid off the bed requests to give me some space? And then he also said that sometimes we need to be pushed to overcome our fears, and he has not backed off of me performing, and I'm honestly thinking about calling things off with how pushy he's become. Edit. I'm at the point of trying to find the words to call things off. The first time we spoke was when I vented about why I didn't feel comfortable performing at the studio recital. The second was after he blindsided me at the graduation and apologized after, and that is when we spoke about about his bed requests, and he promised to stop requesting poses too, and he did. But then he began using the wedding performance as something he wanted to push me into to overcome fears and wouldn't take no for an answer. And that's why I'm at my wit's end. He's even been looking into renting a silks rig for the wedding after I said no, and that was my last straw. Update number 1. I spoke to him shortly after my post and had a few notes from what I mentioned above. I told him about how he changed since my practice, and that I felt like an object since then too. From ignoring numerous no's after giving him too many chances, I told him I was done with the relationship because it had been going on for months. But he said I was being unreasonable and that he gave me space that I asked for. But when I told him that I never asked for space, he asked what would happen if our kids never learned to step out of their comfort zone. But I told him that was unrelated. The bottom line was that he ignored me numerous times over the past few months. But he said I wasn't being fair. He also said that he downloaded some photos from my old Circus Facebook account, a separate one that I've used for silks only, and posted them for encouragement. And I had no clue until he told me. He said he wanted to show me for encouragement because I was better than I thought, and he took me to an Instagram I didn't know he had. It was his main, and the account was mostly for memes. It also had a different name that wasn't related to anything personal, but he said some of his friends followed it. He showed me some posts that came from downloaded images of my high school/college performances, and he never asked for my consent. He even wrote that I was lacking in confidence, and he showed me some comments that said positive things. But there were also one or two that were somewhat lewd from people I didn't know, and the bottom line was he never asked for my consent. He also scrolled away from the lewd ones way too quickly, and I planned to post my silks comeback on Facebook and Instagram after my first recital, but it hadn't happened yet. He told people on his account that I came back, and he said he planned to show me the account/encouragement closer to the wedding. He also said I was being unfair because it was a part of me that he found attractive, so I should be willing to do it more in bed. He wasn't like this before I got back into silks after years off and coming to my practice, and he's been a very different person since then. He even admitted to getting off to some of the photos, but that he'd rather do it with me. That really bothered me because some of the ones that he posted were of me in high school on top of everything else. Now I'm currently working on moving in with a girlfriend temporarily, and she's going to help me move. My now ex-fiance also made a post about how I was being unreasonable and getting upset at him for supporting me on silks, he said. He also said I was projecting my insecurities onto him for trying to be supportive, but he didn't include the sex pressure or wedding performance that he was pushing for. I also asked him to take down the photos, but he said he wouldn't. It really feels like an invasion of privacy. I also spoke to my parents, as some suggested, and they were happy to learn I got back into silks, albeit sad at the same time. My dad is really upset at him and said he's trying to look into the photos being removed, but I'm not sure if much can be done. Mom said that me getting back into silks likely triggered something that was always inside of him, since he knew I did silks in the past, and he became excited when I got back into it. It's just been really stressful, and I'm taking a break from silks for now. I'll try to go back someday, but I'm just really stressed, and will probably take some time off of work too. A few aerialists and circus artists also gave me advice in my first post, which surprised me, and some said it unfortunately wasn't uncommon to find people like my ex-fiance who sexualize everything and can't appreciate the art and skills. Update number 2. Hey guys, I just wanted to come back to this community, especially because it was really helpful, and a few people from here reached out too. I just wanted to get back into silks for the new year, and I'm hoping to soon. I wanted to start in January, but some stuff happened that's been stressful during and after the breakup. He's been really spiteful since we broke up, and he's refused to take the photos down. I tried reporting the photos he stole from my circus Instagram like some suggested, and some of them were able to come down after my parents reported it too. But he then began posting my old photos to one of his meme Twitter accounts since our breakup, and he's posted some that I didn't know I had. I have since made my circus Instagram private for the time being, but I don't want it to be private because it's specifically for aerial, and sometimes helpful as a resume for landing gigs by word of mouth. Not that I was back into shape for performing, but it shows my progress over the years. And I'm guessing he downloaded the other photos in the past, and my friend thinks he used some kind of downloader to download them from Instagram. She also said he could have screenshotted it, and the whole thing's been annoying. I've been trying to move forward with my life, but my dad has been suggesting legal actions for 2 reasons. One is that he posted new photos of me, including some from high school practicing and performing, And the second is because he admitted to getting off to my photos after we broke up and right before I moved out. That really messed with me, and I don't know how long he's done that for. He didn't specify what age I was in the photos he did that on, but Dad is encouraging me to bring it up to authorities because he thinks there might be something more there. And he's uploaded a steady diet of new photos since the breakup, despite my page being temporarily private. The only reason I didn't do it immediately was because he suggested getting a lawyer first, because he's been vindictive, along with the therapist that I now have, and he wanted me to speak to my therapist about it too. I've also hit a delay in going back to my Silks studio, not just because of what he said about my photos and posting new ones I never thought he had, but mostly because of the possibility of something much more sinister going on. In some of my younger photos back in high school, there were other kids in them too, and I'm considering reporting it not just for that reason, but also because I feel I won't have peace until I do. Dad has since consulted with a lawyer about the photos of me as a minor/other kids and him stealing my photos, and I'm likely considering it. I just hate people like him who sexualize everything and probably never appreciated the skills and hard work. He made another comment before I moved out, and he said, "The only reason people cheer girls when they do splits and no other moves is because they're opening their legs." And he began insulting me before I moved out, and it's made me so angry just to remember them. I'm trying to forget and work with my therapist, but I'm hoping to return to Silks at some point this year after sorting through what I mentioned, and I especially appreciate the support from this community and the person who suggested asking fellow aerialists for advice. So, if you took this story and condensed it as much as possible, guy saw a girl do a split, guy got horny. He saw his fiance do a split, went boing, and said, "Hey, can you do this all the time, please? Fetish unlocked, sex, 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 sex." That's him spamming the sex button. And his fiance, OP, was like, "Okay, look, I can do it sometimes, but can we talk about sex, 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 sex? What did you think was gonna happen, you dork, doofus idiot?" He probably wanted to show her off to all his buddies and be like, "Yeah, I tapped that. Huh, do a split, babe." What a douche. Come on, babe, you gotta overcome your fears. What? Oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna, jerk it to photos of you as a child. Oh my God, what a mess. I feel so bad for OP. I'm glad the relationship's over, but, the drama seems to be just beginning because now she probably is going to have to contact a lawyer. And, he's still posting the photos. And, the mental aspect, she had to go to therapy about it because, that's somewhat traumatizing. Just the things he said, the things he's done. Ugh. So, I feel like in the long term, things aren't going to work out for this guy. And maybe the lesson we can all learn here is don't date someone with a meme page. I'll have to think about that. Anyway, next story. Story number 9. I regret not absolutely ruining my life as a teenager. I31F should start by saying that I am insanely happy and love the life I live now. I'm a mom to a beautiful daughter with a husband who I love more than the moon and the stars, in a home that I own, in a town that I love. I am by all measures insanely lucky, and wanting to change anything in my past that would absolutely change it today would be insane. But if I could go back and live my life from 14 to 20 years old, I would have done things much differently. I have been responsible and straight edge from the absolute very beginning, with any thoughts of rebellion squashed out of me by two very well-meaning parents. I was a good student, never drank, never smoked anything, never snuck out at night. I didn't even have a curfew because I never gave my parents a reason to tell me to be home by a certain time. I was always at home. Even in college, I stuck rigidly to my track record of no alcohol or substances and graduated summa cum laude. I absolutely had a social life and amazing friends who are still in my life, but I never partied. Even when I had moved past my parents' puritanical approach, I was too self-conscious of my appearance to really get out there and do something irresponsible. Looking back on myself in those years, that was such an unnecessary waste. So now I fantasize about going back and doing everything I was too repressed to do, but in the extreme, and I mean really extreme. Every substance, every party, every half-attractive man. Because my frontal lobe is fully developed, I know the scenarios I imagine and fantasize about in my head are wildly unsafe, and in many cases even illegal, and one of them would prevent me from having the amazing life I have now, but I still can't help but want it. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "I did that, except I'm a male, so it was a little different.
I almost ruined my life. Is there any way you could get your thrills some other way? Do something rebellious, but nothing that's going to implode your marriage or your life? When you daydream about the person you wish you were, how far apart is that person from who you actually are? Could you do anything in those fantasies in a healthy way? I know that's not as thrilling as true teenage recklessness, but it may scratch the itch so that you aren't stuck fantasizing about this stuff forever. And for the record, life isn't a movie, as I'm sure you know. A lot of my friends from when I was younger are in prison. One is dead. Anyone else is stumbling through life and ironically fantasizing about what you have. I know where you're coming from though, and I think you need to stop looking back and start looking ahead. What are some things you can do to add excitement to your life? Me, I go skydiving every year, rock climbing, solo vacations to odd places. It keeps me feeling independent, even though my life is similar to yours now. Find that thing for you and do it unapologetically.
Then user 2 commented and said,
Well, crap. This is the start of how people blow up their marriage.
and then user 3 commented and said,
I knew a girl that did this. She's absolutely miserable and is afraid she'll never have a family. She messed up her perception of relationships and is unable to trust anyone because of her actions. Trust me, you won. You missed nothing.
Update, same day. To clarify, I am insanely happy with my life right now and have zero, and I mean truly zero urge to do any of these things now in my 30s. The idea is that I wish I had rebelled when I was young, and being young is a part of that fantasy. I do not want to open up my marriage, have an affair, start partying, etc. But as such a depressed teenager, I absolutely wish I had explored more. Over time, those thoughts became exaggerated fantasies. I shared this on the Off My Chest subreddit for exactly that reason. I wanted to get it off my chest. But the idea that I would blow up my life because of these thoughts feels insane to me. I have an amazing sex life with my husband. We're adventurous and are always trying new things. I smoke a little weed, have a glass of wine now and then. All of that is more than enough to scratch this itch now. But I absolutely look back and think about what it would be like to be just young and stupid and completely free. And finally, one user commented and said,
I don't think you regret not being reckless. I think you've spent so many years of your life setting up for the future, and now that you're finally there, you're struggling to turn off the forward-thinking mindset that you've become accustomed to. You're realizing you've been unbalanced and wish you'd simply lived in the moment more. My advice? Don't turn that obsession with the potential future into an obsession with the potential past. Find a way to be mindful, present, and appreciative. Therapy helps.
Thank you. This is actually so immensely helpful and so true. I hadn't thought it that way. Thank you so much. Already in therapy, by the way, and we'll definitely be bringing this up in next week's session. So, this is one of those instances where I can kind of relate to the story. Me personally, I don't drink, smoke, do anything like that, and I've just never had an interest to. And I think, like, my parents, like most parents, would probably tell you, don't smoke, don't do drugs, because, you know, no 16-year-old needs to have a nicotine addiction. I'm looking at you vaping kids, but I have to say that where I differ is I have those options. Like, I could go to a party, I could drink a beer, but I just don't personally have the urge to do so. You know, I'm in my later 20s now, so I can still experience that stuff, but I don't have these regrets that OP's having. Like, there's the overlap kind of ends there. I wasn't really a party person either. You know, I've been to a few and stuff like that, and I've done like the things that I want to do, and there are still things that I want to do, but there's like overlap between OP and I, but like I don't have any of the regrets she's having. Similar experiences, not super strict parents. I didn't go to college, I'm not married or have kids, but the things that she didn't do, I didn't really do, and I'm still not doing, and, you know, personally, I don't regret it, but I can see where she's coming from, but I think that final comment really shifted her perspective and allowed her to see it what it really was, and she's taking it to therapy, which I always recommend. Anyway, next story. Story number 10. OP meets up with her ex, causing her current boyfriend to get upset at her. Hey everyone, I need your advice on a situation that happened to me last week. For some context, I was in a relationship with my ex for a year, but we broke up 7 years ago. I am F27 and my current boyfriend is 32, and my ex is also 27. Last week, out of the blue, my ex DM'd me just to check in to see how I was doing and how life was treating me. Naturally, I told my boyfriend right away, and he said it was okay that my ex had reached out. From there, my ex and I continued messaging throughout the week. Eventually, we even planned to meet up on Saturday. However, I forgot to mention this to my boyfriend right away. When I realized, I told him that I might see my ex and asked how he felt about it, and he said it was fine and that I could go. So I met up with my ex on Saturday, and honestly, we had a really pleasant, positive time. We caught up on our lives, talked about our families, friends, and everything, but nothing more. I want to emphasize that there was absolutely nothing romantic or inappropriate on either side. It was very friendly, and I made sure to be respectful of my boyfriend throughout the whole thing. We even agreed to stay in touch if needed, but strictly in a respectful, platonic way. When I got home, my boyfriend asked how it went, and I told him everything, but he reacted very negatively. He asked to see my phone, went through my entire conversation with my ex, and when he didn't find anything compromising, he seemed even more frustrated. We ended up having a huge argument, and now he's saying he doesn't trust me anymore, that I'm hiding things, that I'm being dishonest, and so on. I'm really confused. I feel like I did everything by the book, being honest and respectful, but my boyfriend's reaction has me questioning myself. Was I wrong to meet up with my ex? Should I have handled this differently? I'd really appreciate your thoughts and advice. Update. Hi everyone. A big thank you to those who were constructive in their responses. And to the others, well, it seems like some of you might be feeling a bit lonely. For those who wanted an update or more info, here's the follow-up. To clarify, my boyfriend is on good terms with all of his exes and talks to them from time to time, which doesn't bother me at all. For those wondering how I'd react if the roles were reversed, I want to say that I have no issues with self-confidence or trust in our relationship, so I trust him 100%. My ex and I haven't spoken since. As for my boyfriend and me, yes, we're still together, we had a thorough discussion. We talked about both his perspective and mine, and it turns out what bothered him the most was that I didn't share more details about the messages exchanged during the week. That being said, he had no problem with me going to see my ex. I even showed him the post and your comments, and he found your reactions quite intense. He also believes it's important to remember that communication is key in a relationship, and that nobody is perfect. You have to work together to make it work. But don't worry, everything is great between us. We're happy and still very much in love. So it's a story with a happy ending. Story number 11. Am I the a-hole asking to go to an event that my boyfriend's friends held and having a breakdown when they flat out refused? My boyfriend, Steven 31M, and I, 29F, have been dating for about a year. Steven and his sister, Rowan, 28F, are friends with a couple, Lily, 34F, and Jared, 36M, who play D&D and board games with. Since dating Steven, I've met them a few times and joined in on their dinners. Recently, they planned a game night and only invited Steven and Rowan. I work irregular hours, nights, and my schedule changes every couple of weeks and only have one weekend day off a week, which is typically when Steven and I get to spend time together, and they scheduled for that night. It was fairly last minute, and I felt hurt and confused about not being invited because in my experience, partners are usually included in social events, and I've always done the same for others. Also, I'm an avid gamer, TTRPGs, board games, etc., and Steven and Rowan were thinking of taking my copy of a brand new game that I'd bought recently to play with. But I don't know for sure that Lily and her husband knew it was my game. I then told Steven how I felt, explaining that I was stressed from work. I work in an emergency response type role, and it was a rough week, and I told him I didn't want to spend the night alone. He spoke with Lily, who said they only wanted the two siblings because it was a 4-person game. Steven then put me on the phone with Lily and pushed me to tell her about my mental health struggle and why I wanted to come even if it was just to watch. So I did, even though I'm an extremely private person and never allow vulnerability outside of close relationships. She said she sympathized but still refused and suggested I find other coping mechanisms like using a weighted blanket instead of relying on Steven for support. I ended the call feeling vulnerable and very upset and had a meltdown. ADHD, emotional overload, not a tantrum by the way. I did not yell or demand anything, and this happened afterwards. And I told Steven I didn't want to visit Lily and her husband again as I am obviously not welcome, but I encouraged him, without any passive aggressiveness, to go and enjoy himself. I didn't want to appear clingy and keep him from his friends, even though I was struggling emotionally. With their explanations about wanting 4 people and that I would be bored, I'm questioning whether I overreacted or not. I see them thinking he should have activities without me and not knowing that he does. I've never asked him to cancel any plans for me before. This was not a common occurrence. I've been spiraling with all sorts of thoughts as to why they didn't want me. Worried that they hate me or that they don't accept me as his girlfriend. I also wonder if my stress and ADHD rejection sensitivity influenced my reaction. So, am I the a-hole for asking to come even though I wasn't invited, and then reacting so strongly to a refusal that I will not see them again? Edit. Answers to a few concerns and a bit more backstory. 1. Steven lives with his sister Rowan, and they see each other all day because he works from home, and she only works part-time, so I wasn't trying to take sibling time away. 2. It was a board game night, not D&D. It wasn't something they do all the time, just a one-off, and they were going to play a board game I had recently bought with Rowan and Steven. Actually, they were going to take my copy, and hadn't had a chance to play it yet, so I at least wanted to watch to learn the rules and stuff. It is only 4 players. 3. I don't have my own separate friend group as I moved to this city for work, and the first few people I met were incredibly toxic, and it's been hard to make new friends with my job in weird hours. I also work with mostly men, so it's hard to just make friends and not have it misconstrued. I met Steven coincidentally at a local event where I was supposed to meet some coworkers, but then walked away from the group because of their wives and girlfriends giving me death threats. 4. I didn't ask to go first. I just wondered why I hadn't been invited and that I'd rather spend the time with him. Steven is a bit of a people pleaser, but especially with his sister, and she was on Lily's side that no, I don't need to be invited. This isn't the only event where she's involved that I've been excluded from. So anyway, he thought he could talk them into inviting me, and then handed me the phone during that call. I don't think he realized the terrible position he put us both in. I was mortified because I'm the kind of person who will never push my company where it is not wanted, and will back away at the slightest hint of that from anyone. My family is all like that, with my grandma making lifelong oaths to never set foot into houses where she ever felt unwelcomed or unwanted, and sticking to that till her dying breath. So I tried for Steven's sake, thinking he knows his friends better, and maybe that this is a misunderstanding. And 5. Steven's previous serious girlfriend was a piece of work, and an all-around awful person to be around, and I do think I've gotten a lot of the backlash for that. I didn't understand why I was getting some weird energy into all my intro meetings with his circle until some of his friends told me that they were nervous about meeting me for the first time, but are so glad I'm a decent person and not like her. Maybe Lily and her hubby have not accepted that yet? She even said one day she thinks I will leave him after chewing him up because I'm out of his league, and I'm probably just playing with him. Update. Steven realized the toll it had on me, apologized and said he would stay with me, but I told him to go. I assured him that I would deal with my feelings on my own, and I especially didn't want his sister to think anything bad about me since they are very close. I wanted to put the whole thing behind me, having come to the conclusion that I won't be friends with Lily and her spouse, but I don't want to ruin his friendship. Then he told me today that they set up the game, but then they just got food and chatted and hung out all night, so I got a bit pissed off. But he was angry too, so I think he sees the situation better now as well. He says Lily was weird to act this way because he's never seen her be this cold or exclusive before, and always talks about inclusivity and being welcoming, and she definitely has dealt with serious mental health issues before that they've helped her through and accommodated. But after reading everyone's comments, I do see her side of it. I can see how it might come across as me using my struggle to strong-arm and manipulate my way into an event at their house. But I only shared because of Steven's belief that she would be caring and understanding and helpful. Still though, I think she was mean to exclude me like that, especially after the events of the night. But I see how it was a crappy experience for her too. Anyway, boyfriend and I are going to work on our communication. I told him how the issue escalated because we didn't work it out between us, and that we should never have actively involved her. He understood. He's 31, but he's been living alone and having mostly short-term relationships, so he hasn't had a chance to learn to navigate these things. And his last serious girlfriend was all of the red flags. And yes, he might be neurodivergent too. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, I am editing this after reading some of the comments from the original post. Your initial post said a D&D type game, but your comments state that it's a board game and they were going to use your copy. That makes a difference. You've only been dating a year. Your comments suggest that there are continuing problems with your boyfriend not meeting your needs, but also make you sound needy and insecure. In a healthy relationship, social interactions with others is healthy. You made a lot of excuses about why you don't have your own friends, and I'm guessing there are things you are leaving out of your post.
You say you only have one night off a week? Are you working 60 to 80 hours a week? Or is your job evening shift? If so, you have morning times you could get involved in activities. Surely there are libraries, museums, animal rescues that could use help, etc. This does not sound like a healthy relationship and may be contributing to your mental health problems. I would say you're not the a-hole, but everyone sucks here.
Thank you for commenting. And sorry, I see how the game types got confusing. I do work late hours and I have 2 days off a week, but one of them is a weekday, and that's when I usually do all of my chores, etc. Because Steven works a regular Monday to Friday 9 to 5. The job is draining, and I did make some friends here at first, but there was a lot of toxicity almost immediately. And yes, I am leaving things out of my post because I anticipate hate or backlash or a "you're delusional." The thing I'm leaving out is it's hard to make friends because men find me quite attractive. It's that tism riz, I guess. I'm no model, like I'm 5 feet tall and not well endowed, but my job keeps me quite fit. I also love video games and other nerdy things, and because masking can lead to reciprocating what others want you to be like, I often become the ideal girl before the mask falls away. In a mixed group, I find that some people will actively hate me for this, either because I don't want to date them or because they think I'm competition. But I've managed to make really good friendships despite this in the past, and I've just moved away from them all, and making new ones as an adult has been hard. Then in the comments section, OP elaborated that Steven and Lily slept together and why she's not bothered by it and said, "Actually, you're right. I am bothered with how she brings up how cute he is, etc., but not bothered that anything's gonna happen now. It's in the past, and I know he's not the cheating type. I've got years of reading people under my belt, and he is a terrible liar. So when he told me it's history, I believe him. I mentioned it because I wonder if that's why I was excluded. Like maybe she's not over it? If I'm not there, it's basically her and 3 people she finds attractive, and who hypothetically find her attractive. I think that sounds quite appealing for an evening's entertainment." And then user 2 commented and said,
Lily sounds a bit like a pick-me girl, and she's threatened by you from what's been explained. You mentioned your boyfriend is 30 and hasn't had any real long-term relationships, which is why this behavior might not have shown up with his previous girlfriends. Her acting like this could be because your boyfriend cares about you and is more serious about you than he was with his exes. I'd be on the lookout for any more sabotaging behavior. I don't think it's that she's not over your boyfriend necessarily, but it does make you the most important girl to him aside from family, and maybe even more than them in some cases. Which could be an issue for her if she's used to him prioritizing her or giving her more attention given their history than just an opposite sex friend where physical attraction isn't involved in the dynamic. Hopefully your boyfriend backs you up when it comes to her. And maybe talk to Rowan to see if you've ever insulted her or hurt her feelings just to cover your bases.
"Oh, maybe I've upset Rowan somehow. I just don't know how." Lily is very fierce about protecting Rowan, so that could be it. The only thing I can think of is something that happened with another friend of Rowan's. Honestly, it probably requires a whole nother Am I the A-hole post, because that situation has me super confused as well. I'm new to this on Reddit, so should I discuss it as a comment or make another post? Then OP elaborated more on that story and said, "I can only think of one event that did it. It was a few months into our relationship, and I'd met Rowan a few times. When her friend Claire visited from out of town, Steven was staying at my place as I had some rare time off. I wanted to spend time with him, but he mentioned needing to go home because Claire was arriving. Although Claire wasn't his friend, Steven needed to be there for her due to his dog's discomfort with strangers. I suggested coming along and doing something together afterwards, but he said Rowan and Claire might want to hang out, so I suggested making it a group outing, but Steven became evasive, hinting that I may not be welcome. His entire manner became super suspicious, and I knew he was lying to me about something. I asked if there was anything I should know about his relationship with Claire, and he said that wasn't it, but that they had chatted online a little, and joked about banging when she visited if he was single. But he's not single, so of course that's not gonna happen. He said there was nothing between Claire and him, but Rowan might not appreciate me coming along, so he had to ask permission. He called Rowan, who said it was fine for me to join. After that, Steven's behavior returned to normal, and we went to his place, then out for dinner. The evening went well, and I enjoyed meeting Claire, who seemed friendly. After dinner, I noticed Claire looking tired, and I made a comment that I thought was harmless, and I was like, "Aw, your expression reminds me of a grandmother who's happy to see her grandchildren, but is very tired and wants to go to bed now." Claire was shocked and embarrassed, and Rowan gasped and said something like, "OMG, that's savage." And everyone, including Claire, laughed, but I knew I had said something wrong, and I apologized immediately. The next day, we went out thrifting, and Rowan stopped me in the parking lot with Steven, saying my comment was inappropriate and made Claire cry for being called out for her tiredness, and and she told me to be more mindful of my words. I apologized repeatedly and asked to apologize to Claire again, but she told me she didn't want to talk about it. Steven supported Rowan's view, saying I needed to be more careful with my words. I spent the day being extra cautious and feeling ambushed. I now see a pattern of behavior stemming from this incident. I worry that this might be why Rowan wants to exclude me from things. From her perspective, I joined her on a fun weekend with her friend and brother and made her friend cry. But really, was my comment about Claire so inappropriate that it required a confrontation in the parking lot and exclusion from future events?
I don't know how to tackle this story. I'm going to be honest. I feel like there's more that we're not getting here from like OP side of the story. And then Steven and Lily slept with each other, and then someone's neurodivergent, but someone is, so someone's missing cues. I don't know. I'm not going to tackle this one, all right? I don't want to say tear it all down and just throw it all out. We're not there yet, but if there was like 10, 15% more of this ridiculousness, I would have been like, OP, just leave. This ain't worth it. Because, I mean, I don't know. These people seemingly don't like her for some reason. I thought her comment was, like, stupid or something, but, like, I didn't see it as harmful. Like, oh, your expression reminds me of a grandmother who's happy to see her grandchildren, but is very tired and wants to go to bed now. Like, it's weird, but, like, is anyone gonna cry over that? I don't think so. I don't know. These are people in their late 20s and 30s, so they can figure that out and be adults or something, but I don't know how to tackle this one. Anyway, next story. Story number 12. Am I the a-hole for not wanting my husband's ex-wife to watch our daughter when we return to work full-time? My husband, M38, is trying to convince me, F28, to have his ex-wife be the primary caretaker of our daughter instead of utilizing daycare when we return to work. Our daughter will be 3 months old when my maternity leave ends, and then the plan has always been for her to go to daycare. We have read reviews and interviewed the director at the daycare, and up until about a month before our daughter was born, he seemed satisfied with this arrangement. Around the 7-month mark of my pregnancy, my husband got the idea that we should ask his ex-wife to watch our daughter instead of utilizing daycare. We have a very positive co-parenting relationship with her and have never had so much as an argument. We all work together to do what's best for their son, M8. While we have a great co-parenting relationship, I'd like to maintain the current boundaries we have in place. To me, having to drop our daughter off every day and pick her up before and after work has potential to blur lines and create an arrangement I'm simply not comfortable with. While I understand that this would likely save us money and give him peace of mind with personally knowing who will be watching our daughter, I don't think it is something I will ever be entirely okay with. He insists that I need to put my ego aside and take emotions out of my decision-making to choose what's best for our daughter. This arrangement would also require him to alter his work schedule significantly and require one of us to take time off of work when she or their son is ill. Not to mention, we would have to plan summer vacations around her schedule as well. Maybe I am more comfortable with the idea of daycare since I was in one until roughly 5th grade, and still maintain contact with the teachers I had while there. I just want to maintain boundaries. So, am I the a-hole for not wanting my husband's ex-wife to watch our daughter full-time when we return to work? Edit. She would be paid, by the way, just not as much as the daycare. Then in the comments section, OP elaborated on how she helps take care of her stepson when on his father's custody time and said, "What I do to take care of him is limited to maintain appropriate boundaries. For example, bath time is only done with his dad, and in the entirety of our relationship, I've only watched him independently for longer than 30 minutes once. Not to mention, he is 8 years old, so he knows who his mother is and can understand the role of a step-parent to a certain extent. I'm not afraid to say I don't want to increase the time we are spending with his ex. I don't know a lot of people that are looking to be in constant communication with their spouse's ex, though. Also, she hasn't agreed to watching our daughter. The idea of it was mentioned to her by my husband a while ago when she brought up the price of daycare with her one day. Apparently, she said she would do it for half that, and he seems to have taken that comment and ran with it. I asked him not to discuss it with her further because I don't want to pursue that option. Since then, he has continued to push me to reconsider. Then OP elaborated on how her husband's ex can be at home during the weeks and what the ex would get out of babysitting for OP and her husband, and said, "She works Friday and Saturday nights. This works well for her, and she is able to avoid childcare this way. I have a career and job that I love and want to return to after maternity leave. Daycare was always the plan even prior to me getting pregnant. Well, until now.
Also, she would be paid, just not as much as a daycare. I'm sure she could use the extra money, and her schedule allows for it since she only works Friday and Saturday nights. My husband currently works 4 days a week and could change the day he takes off to Fridays instead of Mondays to allow this arrangement to work. Also, she is in a long-term relationship and seems happy, so to me, it is unlikely that there is anything suspicious going on between her and my husband. It's not even that I don't trust his ex to watch her occasionally, but more as like an occasional babysitter. I'm just uncomfortable with the idea of her being a primary caregiver for our daughter. I have argued that we would be at the will of her schedule, and the potential for last-minute cancellation could be problematic. He countered with, "Well, I have plenty of sick and vacation time, so it's not a big deal." Then OP elaborated on custody and how involved her husband is as a father and said, "Custody is 50-50, and he is a very involved father. We attend every soccer practice and game. Sundays regularly involve special outings and helping with homework or extra practice for the areas his son struggles with, and it has never been an issue." And finally, one user commented and said,
Honestly, you're not wrong for wanting to keep things simple and stick to the daycare plan. Boundaries are important, especially in blended families.
Update. I am pleasantly surprised with the update I came to give today. After showing my husband the post I made here on Reddit, he seemed genuinely surprised with the overwhelming number of people that were siding with me on this. After reading through comments, we had a very cordial conversation about why he feels his ex would be a better option than daycare. He went on to explain that he was often watched by his father's ex growing up, and that he felt it created a village for him to rely on as a kid. With his ex watching our daughter, he feels we would eliminate risks associated with daycare, and this would allow our daughter to have the undivided attention of one individual. Thanks to this post, though, he was much more willing to hear me out, and ultimately left the decision up to me, but still made his opinion on daycare very clear. After our argument the other night, I gave in to a certain extent and told him to reach out to his ex to see if this is something she would even want to do. While she wasn't opposed to it, she wasn't necessarily jumping at the opportunity either. She seemed indifferent, and more like the money would be beneficial, but wasn't going to be offended if we chose daycare at the end of the day. I have stood my ground, and throughout this made it clear I would like to maintain our current co-parenting dynamic and avoid putting ourselves in a position where we could jeopardize the relationship. We still don't agree on the matter, but he has accepted my choice and validated my feelings. All in all, a great outcome. Thanks for the input, guys. Then in the comments section, one user said,
Wait, so he was making all these plans in his head and became vitriolic about it without even having a conversation with his ex about whether she'd be willing to babysit or not? Dude puts his wants and feelings before both of you frequently, doesn't he? He sounds extremely selfish.
My husband had a brief discussion with her months ago when discussing the cost of childcare, where she responded with,
Hell, I'd do it for half of that.
and he took it literally, while to me it seemed more just like a lighthearted remark. And I'd asked him not to discuss it with her further because I was opposed to the idea. Evidently, she was serious. So, I'm in OP's camp here. I just can see why you wouldn't want, like, your partner's ex watching your child. Like, even if there is a healthy co-parenting dynamic, I can just understand why you don't want that. Why you don't want to risk that. And like she mentioned, they're at the mercy of her schedule. Something might come up. Daycare's more consistent, so unless the building's blown up, you could probably drop the kiddos off. Also, one thing that I've been wanting to see more and more, and have grown to liking more over time, is OP just straight up showed her husband the post. I don't know why, but I feel like there are times where just showing the other side in these miscommunication stories, your written perspective, which is, better worded out, and also the comments can help too. I feel like can be beneficial at times, just for people to be like, oh wow, this is what they see. Reading it and seeing it and taking it in. So I always like when people do that. Anyway, next story. Story number 13. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to lower my daughter's standard of living for her stepsister? Me and my ex-wife divorced around 5 years ago when she came out as a lesbian. We are still really good friends, and we are both confused about what to do here. Around 2 years ago, she got married to Linda, and her daughter Mia, 12F. My daughter Anne is currently 17 years old. I have worked hard for the career and income I have, and I am not ashamed to want Anne to enjoy it. As such, I have given her a relatively large allowance. Anne grew up volunteering at our local shelter with me and her mom weekly, so she isn't spoiled at all. Anne and Mia were really close at first, but recently Mia has been acting out about the lifestyle disparities between Anne and the rest of my ex-wife's household, like how unfair it is that Anne gets to order food for delivery whenever she wants, and how she has fancier electronics and clothes than what my ex and Linda can afford for her. Her biological father passed away, and it has gotten to the point that it has started to affect her relationship with Anne. Last week was apparently the last straw, when she said,
I wish my dad was alive so I would have the same stuff Anne has.
and my ex-wife scheduled a meeting with me to talk about things. We pretty much seem to be on the same page since we both have no idea what to do. We are not comfortable with lowering Anne's allowance since we're worried it would make her resent Mia, nor are we comfortable with prohibiting her from using her allowance at her mother's place, since it might alienate her from her mother's household and make her not want to be there. My understanding is that Anne offers to share things she buys, makeup, food, clothes with Mia sometimes, but not all the time. But I don't feel comfortable enforcing a sharing rule either, since my therapist advised me that it usually breeds resentment. However, Linda has been very upset with both me and my ex-wife, since it's causing a lot of disturbance with Mia, and a lot of big feelings and if my dad was alive kind of stuff, and it's genuinely harming for her mental health. Linda acknowledges that it is an unfair ask, but she asked me if I could have a talk with Anne about maybe saving more of her allowance to not spend so much in front of Mia for the sake of creating a healthier and more harmonious household. I told her I understand where she is coming from, but I don't feel comfortable controlling how my daughter spends money, that I give her to spend as she pleases. So, am I the a-hole? Then in the comments section, OP elaborated on the possibility of Anne moving in with him and said, "We did think about this option, but one, having her just move in with me is basically running away from conflict rather than teaching compromise and conflict resolution. Would I have her move in with me whenever she had any sort of friction with anyone she was living with? Two, that is basically distancing herself from a loving, amazing mother." Then one user commented and said,
Not the a-hole. 5 years is a big age difference between the girls. Mom of the 12-year-old needs to have a conversation with her. It's not fair that the 17-year-old has to hold back for a 12-year-old. She's older and has more privileges.
Then user 2 replied and said,
And if it is affecting the 12-year-old's mental health and maybe she's regressing and grieving for her dad, then she needs to be in therapy. The 17-year-old isn't responsible for her mental health and shouldn't be made to feel that she is.
Yeah, see, this is the hard part. I want to strike a balance between you're not responsible for the feelings of others while simultaneously communicating that you should still care about the feelings of those close to you, as kindness, mindfulness, and consideration are good qualities to have. And finally, user 3 commented and said,
Not the a-hole. The allowance you give to your daughter is none of Linda's business. Your daughter is 5 years older than her daughter, so there should be nothing to be surprised about the fact that she gets more pocket money.
Update. So, after thinking about it for a while, I still don't think it's effective to enforce anything. Making Anne share everything with Mia or banning her from using her allowance at her mother's place will just create resentment towards Mia. Having her spend more time here is also alienating her from her mom. However, I am of the opinion that there is more to parenting than just enforcing rules, and encouraging good qualities, even without a consequence attached, is also important for older kids. I will not force Anne to do anything to pacify Mia or punish her for it, but I decided it is perfectly fine and, dare I say, necessary for me to have a heart-to-heart with her about the hurt she's unintentionally causing to Mia and the potential future ramifications of that. I'm going to talk to her tomorrow when she comes over, and I'm going to bring up the following points. 1. The allowance I give her is hers to spend as she pleases. This has been and will remain her right. 2. However, spending money on Uber Eats and clothes and other things in front of Mia is upsetting to her, given both the fact that she's a child who doesn't understand financial matters just yet, and that she only has one parent to provide for her. 2. Mia might eventually grow up to understand, or she might not. Even if she does understand later, the upset caused in the meantime will be damaging to their relationship, and possibly to her relationship with Linda. And 4. Sometimes we do things that we don't want to do that are not necessarily fair or just in the traditional sense to protect relationships that we value. It's better to be happy than right. Doing this does not necessarily mean you're a doormat, and it is an important part of living in a society. Granted, this is only okay if done sometimes, not over every single issue in a relationship, and ultimately, it is up to her and her alone to determine if that particular relationship is worth it. So, I feel like what I'm doing is a good balance between not encroaching on Anne's rights, but also encouraging kindness and consideration and letting her know about the potential consequences of what she's doing as an older adult. Please feel free to give some more advice about what I should include in the talk. Now, here are some more relevant comments. User 1 said,
They are a 17-year-old and a 12-year-old. They are not in the same place in life. What if Anne had a part-time job and this was how she was making money? Would she still have to control her spending around Mia so that her feelings aren't hurt? Having a talk with Anne but not outright forbidding her is a distinction without a difference. It's still punishing Anne and coddling Mia.
I am not punishing her. We live in a society. Sometimes sacrifices are necessary to avoid upsetting those that you love and care about. If, and only if, Anne cares enough, she deserves to be told about the ramifications of her actions so there are no surprises she gets to regret later. If she doesn't care enough, that's her own choice and her right. The absolutism here is insane in your comment. Don't be a Sith Lord. Then user 2 commented and said,
Has nobody else said the root of the issue has less to do with money and more to do with the jealousy that Mia has because Anne's father, OP, is alive and able to be active in Anne's life? I think the money is the vague top issue, but if you dig deeper, it's the unresolved grief of knowing Mia will never have her dad's support because he isn't alive to give it. Mia needs therapy, both individual and possibly family with your ex-wife and possibly even Anne, so the girls can speak with a professional from their different points of view. I understand OP isn't expected to provide this therapy, but pass this info on to Anne's mom, as I think Linda's resentment is misplaced because she's only seeing the money issue and not addressing the grief issue here. If Mia's parents refuse therapy for her child, Anne may be better off staying with OP, as her mom has bigger issues with her spouse than she may be willing to admit.
So, I feel like that final comment gave some pretty good perspective. Like, it may not be the money thing, it's probably, I'm personally willing to bet the bigger, deeper issue here might be the whole father thing. Did she go to therapy? I don't know. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't, but clearly there's still something there, or she probably wouldn't have brought it up. And she's a 12-year-old. You know, kids don't know how to deal with these things naturally. So, as for the talk that Dad mentioned, OP mentioned, I thought he made some pretty good points. I was thinking to myself, he kind of covered what I thought. Like, I'm not going to punish you, I'm not going to restrict you, but I do need to let you know, because, you're 17 and you haven't seen the world entirely, like, here's what can happen. Here's how people see money, right? Like, here's the possibilities. Just explaining how the world works, because, as he said, we live in a society. I love memes. Anyway, next story. Story number 14. My F24 fiance, M25, returned an award he was given at work, and he thinks it's the reason he wasn't promoted. Hey guys, longtime lurker here in need of some advice. My fiance was recommended/given a training assignment some months back for a vacancy that would be opening, and he showed me a review at the end that he received where he received great marks. However, to his surprise, he wasn't given the position, and he was the only person training for it. He's been feeling down the past couple of days, but he also told me something that I didn't know. A few weeks back, he was given an award in a meeting that he returned to his boss, the same boss who recommended him for the vacancy, because he said he doesn't like awards, and he never told me about it either. He also told his boss he didn't appreciate being blindsided, and he admitted he was emotionally stressed from the meeting when he talked to him the same day. He also told him to never give him an award again, and he thinks that's the reason he didn't get the promotion. When I asked why he didn't tell me about it, he said that work was his space and that it didn't concern me, and that honestly hurt. He also said he's thinking about leaving the company, and he's been there since he interned at college. My mom said to suggest that he speak to a professional about why he was bothered by the award/our relationship, but Dad said I should reconsider because he created a fan to walk into that hurt his career. I want to see if he'll talk to a professional before reconsidering, but Dad said I shouldn't even give him a chance. I believe I'm making the right decision by seeing if he's open to it, not just for job stuff, but also for our relationship. But I want to ask if I'm going about it correctly. Then in the comments section, one user said,
I'm sure it did hurt his career. He was ungracious and humiliated his boss publicly.
Literally, he said he couldn't focus, although he went to his office and returned it after the meeting and not during it, but still. Said he couldn't focus for the rest of the day and brought a lot of emotions into the office when he went. Update number 1. So, before suggesting therapy, I asked him to further explain why he returned the award when everything seemed to be going well for him. And I want to remind you that he showed me a written review of his training assignment that he worked for a few months that came back with great remarks, albeit nothing about returning the reward that had nothing to do with it. He said that he viewed work awards similar to participation trophies that he wanted no part of. But when I asked if his reward was that, he said it was a certificate recognizing him for his work along with training/assisting others when his boss asked him to sometimes. Mostly on computer when someone didn't know how to do something, so he'd show them over Microsoft Teams. He specifically said it wasn't a participation award, but that he viewed all awards the same. And he also said that it would make it awkward when he helped people in the future because awards make people seem less genuine, and that returning it showed he was down to earth. When I asked why he couldn't just accept the reward and do whatever he wanted with it at home, he said it was a gesture to show he wasn't a management suck-up, and that he'd be the same person after getting promoted. And he also said he saw someone lose friends at work after after crossing over to management's side because it was an us versus them mentality, and he compared his gesture to the person who rejected the Nobel Peace Prize that he heard referenced in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. However, he knew nothing about it besides the reference because he loves Marvel movies and didn't even know the guy's name. But when I asked if he regretted it since everything seemed to go well with his training before the issue he likely made for himself, he said he was considering suing the company because he was treated unfairly, and he wasn't open to therapy because I did nothing wrong. I went on to tell him that it hurt when he said his work life didn't concern me, and he said there were many things he said at work that I wouldn't approve of, but that it was his space, just like managers who talk behind coworkers' backs. But when I reminded him that we were engaged and incomparable to a coworker-manager relationship, he said I wasn't supporting him and didn't want couples counseling either, and that's pretty much how it went. The reason I spoke to my parents before we talked was because of an idea he floated in my first post that I didn't mention, and I want to explain it because some said I threw him under the bus to my parents, so I'll explain why. He said he was considering working a retail job in the meantime after quitting because he thinks he's hit a dead end, and he said he'd be more respected there too. The other reason I told my parents was because we were looking at a home to buy, but those plans have changed and he wants to stay in our apartment, and that was before he mentioned anything about suing the company. He said he didn't mind making less if it meant having more respect, and I was willing to try and work things out if he considered therapy or couples counseling, but now that he's refused and doubled down, I told him that I'm reconsidering. Well, he didn't like that, and then he said I wasn't on his side just like his boss, the same boss who recommended him for the vacancy and gave him the award, and he has been distant since. He slept by himself on the couch and even ate dinner on his own the past few nights, and I'm trying to see if my parents can let me bring some stuff to their place come Friday. I feel like he threw everything away for no reason, got a great review on his training, and made an issue out of nothing when there was none. Learning about everything he kept from me still hurts, and I might try to talk to someone myself. But it really hurts because he basically said I never knew him at work, and maybe that's just how he is when he's not with me. Edit. So, this idea to reject the award came from Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and more specifically comes from the guy who was referenced in the movie for rejecting the Nobel Peace Prize from what he told me. But he didn't even know the guy's name or anything beyond it came from the movie, because he's a big Marvel fan. He also said it was a selfless thing to do, and showed he wasn't a management award suck-up to his coworkers, who'd appreciate a down-to-earth manager when he crossed over into management. He also said it was something selfless that Captain America would do, and he said he wants to sue because he was wrongfully removed from consideration for the position for personally not liking awards, despite a great written review on his training assignment, and that it would help fellow employees who felt pressured to take management awards to move up, because he believes that all awards are participation trophies. As a result of trying to talk to him and see if he'd be interested in couples therapy, he refused to think that he did anything wrong, and still plans to sue, and I based my reconsidering of the relationship on his willingness to get counseling. I will be trying to move everything to my parents on Friday, but he's been treating me as if I don't exist because he knows that I'm done. He eats dinner alone, sleeps alone, and barely says a word to me anymore because I'm attacking him like his boss. So I'm just trying to get to Friday, but it's been hard because he's turned on me.
Now, here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "Everyone else is giving you good advice, so I just want to bring up something else. The guy he's quoting from Captain America: The Winter Soldier is Nick Fury talking about Alexander Pierce. This being the same guy who rejected the Nobel Peace Prize because he said peace wasn't an achievement, it was a responsibility. Well, Alexander Pierce turns out to be the villain of that movie. Spoilers, but Pierce is a Hydra agent, the coded Nazi fascist antagonist organization of the movies, and tries to and is about to kill millions of people for the sake of peace before being stopped by Captain America. Like, your boyfriend's apparently a Marvel fan but looks up to the fascist genocidal maniac for his life quotes and work ethic? I mean, he is sort of destroying himself for the sake of his own ego while also taking you down with him. Falls in line with a lot of Marvel villains, to be honest, and Cap isn't the one rejecting the award."
Wow, it's crazy how he based his whole decision around a movie that maybe he didn't even fully understand, and now he wants to sue the company for the employees who felt pressured to accept management awards because he thinks he's fighting for them or something, along with how he was wrongfully refused the position for not liking awards, which shows he doesn't get it, but he thinks he's a hero fighting for other employees. Then OP elaborated on ending her relationship with the fiance as he might have mental health issues and said, "That's where I'm at, and I'm just trying to get everything to my parents at the moment." And he literally said he was doing a selfless thing by returning it, and doesn't seem to get it. And he doesn't seem to care when I told him how my feelings were hurt. Plus, I literally thought everything else was going great at his job, and it sounds like it was until he self-sabotaged for some reason. Like, I was surprised because I read his review from the vacancy training, and it was really good, and he developed a good relationship with his boss who recommended him for it, up until the award thing. Then OP elaborated on her fiance's thoughts about being a hero for rejecting the award and said, "He said he was some kind of hero for doing it, and compared it to the person who rejected the Nobel Peace Prize. I think some of it was what he said about not wanting to lose friends once he became management, like someone else he knew who did. But you don't kill your career somewhere to keep friends." He said returning the award like the guy who rejected the Nobel Peace Prize was commendable, and it showed that he was willing to be a down-to-earth manager to his employees because he didn't suck up to management. He said he wanted to sue because he was unfairly removed from consideration when he was the only person training for it, and he said it was unfair not to get a promotion due to not wanting an award, which makes no sense because a promotion is an award for good work. I could be wrong though, since according to him, I barely know him at work, but he kept repeating the part about how his friend lost friends at work after becoming management because of the us versus them mentality, and not wanting the same thing to happen to him. Thus why he returned the award to try and show that he wasn't a management suck-up or something. Personally, I think his friend could have lost his friends for another reason he didn't know about, since some said that this situation showed how little he is able to read the room in some ways. But I think he was paranoid of losing friends once he became management. And finally, OP elaborated on moving away from her fiance and staying with family and said, "I'm just wanting to stay with my parents and move everything up to their place come Friday, because he's been distant from me, calling me the enemy, eating and sleeping separately, and it hurt." He literally said I wasn't supporting him like his boss, when his boss recommended him for the vacancy and gave him the award, and it is really hypocritical too. Update number 2. Returning to this because a lot of people reached out to me and were helpful, and I appreciate everyone who did. I'm currently at my parents', and my ex-fiance was pestering me to move everything to their home before Friday when I eventually did, and it was really stressful. However, he did something that I didn't expect before I moved on Friday that I'm still dealing with, and a lot of friends and family know about it now because of what he did. Before I got around to telling them, he made a Facebook post that was pretty long and posted it to Twitter too. And long story short, he addressed the co-workers about what happened with his promotion and said that many of them were likely wondering what happened and that he wanted to explain his side before the wrong people did. He wrote that his bosses wrongfully rescinded the promotion because he told his boss that he didn't like awards, and he included the manager's name. He wrote about his conversation with his boss and how he respectfully spoke to him in his office instead of refusing the award at the meeting because he wanted to show respect. He also said that his manager previously knew about his anxiety surrounding awards and chose to give it to him anyway when he knew it would hurt his focus, but he never once mentioned anything about anxiety to me. He never mentioned anxiety in the past, and he never mentioned that he spoke to his boss about anxiety too. He also left out what he told me about how he was emotional when he spoke to his boss and said some things he probably shouldn't have. He left out the part about being blindsided by the award and "don't ever give me awards again," and my dad thinks he's lying about having spoken to his boss about anxiety to look like a martyr, and he thinks he made it up to draw pity, and the rest of his post made him think that too. When he wrote about how he was going to sue the company, he said he was doing it for others who feel pressured to take awards in order to move up, and that he was fighting for them. He said it was unfair of his boss to refuse him for mental health reasons he knew beforehand, and he wanted to pave the way for others with mental health challenges. He also said he was inspired by NBA player Kyrie Irving, he's also a basketball fan, who refused to get vaccinated and sacrificed salary and backlash to be a voice for the voiceless for other people who didn't want to be vaccinated. The Brooklyn Nets didn't allow him to play for many games due to being unvaccinated, and while he disagreed with Kyrie's stance on vaccinations, we are both vaccinated, he admired how he fought and forced the Brooklyn Nets to play him and cave as they struggled in the standings/injuries and showed that corporations would eventually cave to employees. Like Kyrie, my ex-fiance said he wanted to be a voice for the voiceless who felt pressured to accept awards to move up at his job, and he also said he wanted to make management cave to him, and that was the reason he was suing for the employees. He also wrote that I had broken up with him because I didn't support his mental health condition just like his boss, but he never once mentioned anything related to mental health to me ever. Heck, he left out all the details about how he told his boss off, and my dad said he might be making it up to create a case when he knows he has none, or just wants to smear the company, and Dad has also begun calling him the fake Captain America from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then he showed me some clips from the TV show when I asked about what he meant. Going back to my ex-fiance, he also wrote he was glad to find out I didn't support mental health before we had kids, which really surprised me because I suggested couples counseling together, but he told me he didn't need it because he did nothing wrong. He also wrote that I refused to have sex with him or sleep together after he opened up about his anxiety, when he was the one who opted to sleep away from me on the couch after he accused me of not supporting him like his boss. He also said he was talking to someone he knew who was a union shop steward for advice, and he said there'd be more in the future too. A lot of friends and relatives called me and my parents in the aftermath of his post, mostly those who saw the Facebook one I was tagged in, and my parents and I have been telling them our side. I also received DMs from people telling me off for not supporting his mental health, who I'm guessing are his friends, and some of them were really vulgar too. That only happened on my Instagram, and I've blocked a lot of them since because I don't know them. But it's been stressful after he tagged me in his post, and I'm honestly tired of repeating myself to everyone. However, I don't believe in engaging him in drama on social media, so I've continued to explain to everyone who's reached out with the help of my parents. The other thing that sucks is how he called my job after I moved out and told them that I said a lot of ableist things about him, about his mental conditions, which weren't true. And while I don't think it'll amount to anything, I had to speak to HR about it, which surprised me. My dad doesn't think anything will come from it either, but he's been livid, and I am honestly too. Dad has also suggested a lawyer after he called my job, and it's something we're investigating for maybe defamation. Don't know if that's the proper term, but maybe something in the ballpark of what he's doing. I just hope he stops, but he doesn't seem to be from his post and calling my job, and he said there'd be more to come too. I just hope he stops with me at the least, because I could care less if he wants to sue on his own, but we will see what Dad and I come up with on a lawyer. Edit. I want to clarify something that many people seemed unsure about. Some people asked if he was really in the running for a promotion or had made it up. I saw a physical review that he brought home detailing the assignment and the scores for the duties he performed when it was done, and it was related to the position that he was training for. The scores were really good, and he had no negative marks about the training. Returning the award was unrelated to the training, and his manager also took him out to dinner a few weeks before he returned the reward in regards to the promotion too. I also saw some confusion about when my ex-fiance returned the award, and many asked if he returned it during the meeting to make a statement to his coworkers. He returned it after the meeting and after spending time at his desk where he said he was uneasy, and that led him to go to his manager's office where he told him to never give him an award again. In regards to how he showed his coworkers that he wasn't a suck-up, he said he told them in passing in the days after he returned it to his boss, and the award had nothing to do with the promotion that he was training for and wasn't a certificate needed for it. The award was given for how he helped others on Microsoft Teams through screen sharing when his boss asked him to assist others many times, and it wasn't related to his training assignment. Update number 3. This will probably be my last update for a while, so I decided to make it an edit instead since it seems I've surpassed the amount of updates I can have on some subreddits. My dad was able to get in touch with a lawyer, and he agreed with the suggestion that many of you gave to send a cease and desist letter to my ex, we'll call him Nate, specifically for contacting my job, along with posting and tagging me on his social media rants. We are considering other action too, but I wanted to touch on that because many suggested it. Things have also quieted down at my job since HR called me in to talk about how Nate called them, and we had another meeting too. Long story short, I gave them the full picture, and they agreed that he was being vindictive. I also showed them the social media rants that he made, and that cemented to them just how delusional he was. However, Dad suggested something else too. He suggested that I call my ex's company to see if I could speak to someone there, and I was able to speak with Nate's manager after explaining who I was to someone else, and he ended up calling me back on the same day, and I told him that I just wanted to ask him a few things. I told him, we'll call him John, about how Nate had become my ex after his Facebook rant, and he said he saw it too from an employee who showed it to him. I also told him about how he contacted my job too. When I asked about the promotion that Nate was training for, he confirmed it was real, and that Nate was the only candidate, and he opened up about his decision to recommend him. He said he saw potential in Nate, and since he started working there in college as an intern, he called him a hard worker too. He was younger then, but he tried to support him. He gave him extra work that resulted in more hours when he wanted more in his early days, he also helped him become full-time too. He said he was smart, honors in high school and college, and it showed at work too, he said. He also mentioned Nate used to be humble and appreciative, but that he let it go to his head somewhere along the way. His annual reviews were amongst the best, and he recommended him for the vacancy that was opening up because he thought he would do well. He called him into the office and told him that he wanted to offer him training for the vacancy, and it would have come with a nice raise too. They wanted to hire within, and he wanted to reward him for his hard work. There was no applying for the vacancy at all. He asked if he was interested, and he said that he was, and he began training shortly after. The training lasted for a few months, but he said he aced it. And when I told him that he showed me the review of his training, he said it was true and that he did well. But when it came to the award, he got too buddy-buddy with how he talked to him, and he told me some things that I didn't know. My ex told me that the award was for helping people through Microsoft Teams through screen sharing, but he received it for more than just that. He would stay late to help people with assignments that were not his responsibility, and he helped someone meet a deadline by staying late when it would have been late otherwise. In regards to the award, he received a certificate along with PTO during a meeting, and John said he shyfully accepted it. However, sometime after the meeting on that same day, Nate went to his office and was unlike himself, but when John asked if something was wrong, Nate went off the rails and looked stressed. When I asked if Nate told him to never give him an award again, he confirmed that he did, along with the blindsiding comment. And he also raised his voice and used some profanity, and when John tried to calm him down, he wouldn't have it. He stormed out of the office and left the award there, but when his boss tried to find him a few minutes later, he found that he had left almost an hour earlier than he should have clocked out. And he tried to call him to see if he was alright, but he didn't answer 2 consecutive calls, and I had no clue about him leaving early. When he came in the next day, his boss went to his cubicle and asked if everything was alright, but when he asked if they could talk in his office, Nate refused and said there was nothing to talk about. But when John said he wanted to make sure he was fine, he cursed at him from his cubicle, and others heard it too. So, while his training review came back sensational, John said that effectively ended his chances for the promotion because he was done with him, and he tried to be reasonable and give him a chance to explain himself instead of getting on him for leaving early, but he spat in his face. He didn't tell HR about how he returned the award the day before because he wanted to give him a chance and felt that he might have triggered some trauma, but when he cursed at him the following day, that was it. He told his manager/HR everything that happened and said he was wrong about him and wasn't mature enough, and he said it hurt because he put himself out on a limb to recommend him when other managers wanted to hire someone older. Throughout our conversation, he kept saying that he was a good kid and that he saw himself in him, but the more he thought about it, he said he might have had a silver spoon growing up because he never learned how to be personable during stress, which was essential for management. To his last point, my dad agreed with his assumption of Nate. Honor society in high school and college, along with the dean's list too. His parents didn't require him to work when he worked retail. He wanted to work there because his friends were going to be there. As long as his grades were good, his parents paid for gas, brought him a car, never requested for him to work, and paid for college too. I paid for my own college and took semesters off because I couldn't afford it with fluctuating hours. But when people asked how I didn't see this side of him, he was always nice when things were going well, and his boss said so too. Giving him the award triggered something, and he wasn't mature enough to have a conversation about it. Nate would often surprise me with flowers and other gifts, and we'd watch movies and have fun, but when he became stressed with the award, his immaturity showed because he accused me of taking his manager's side and began to treat me differently. My dad said that everything at work had gone right for him leading up to the award, but that moment probably triggered something and showed that he wasn't reliable when crap hit the fan because it was everyone else's fault. He also didn't blame me for not seeing it sooner because he was probably spoiled and protected by his parents at every turn, my dad said. And he also said that John didn't see it either after working with Nate for almost 5 years until getting triggered. I still blame myself for not seeing it sooner, but this was the first time I've seen him really bothered by something that wasn't even bad. The award was a good thing, but it is what it is. He made another post talking about a live stream he was going to do alongside his shop steward, but I won't address it in this update because it's getting too long. We're currently working on the cease and desist letter, and that is the first step right now. I appreciate everyone who reached out. It's been a lot having to explain to friends and family who saw me tagged in his original rant, but taking things one day at a time because what else can you do?
Okay, so is Nate stupid or something? I feel like he unironically believes that he is Ryan Gosling. Like, we went from living in a society to I am actually Ryan Gosling memes. What is going on with this guy? Is he having a mental break? And how did he not realize that he was quoting the bad guy from the movie? I almost wish Actually, I really wish that OP was like, hey, Nate, you should watch that Captain America movie. Let me put it on for you. La, 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 la. And then his world shatters in front of him because he realizes the person he quoted is the freaking Nazi supporting bad guy. Two things about the story, though. One, OP was like, oh, I gotta reply to all these people messaging me. Did she not make a post replying or just making her own statement? Maybe she didn't want it publicly on her wall for other people not involved to see. So I don't know, maybe that could have been helpful, but I'm not like blaming her, dunking on her or anything. And I'm glad that she replied to those people clearing her name, and it's good that she's getting a lawyer involved, and fortunately so that she has to do that. And two, did she not meet his parents? Like, she kind of knew his backstory, but not the whole thing, but she doesn't mention if she actually met him. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know how long they were together, but I thought that was interesting. But you know what? Nate is dead, all right? He died, guys. He's gone. He went to Miami, Florida, and he died with Scrappy Doo, all right? Sharks got him. Forget him. Who cares about him? Let the law deal with Nate. I've never personally met a Nate that I liked. I'm not saying all Nates are bad, but I got bad Nate experience, and so does OP too. But anyway, guys, we are at the end of the really long video. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a really good day, and bye-bye!